During a family vacation, my husband's parents made me sit at a separate table. No one spoke to me the whole trip. When I asked Mark, he just shrugged and said, "It's just their way." I smiled and said, "Well, I have my own way too." The next morning, I realized things weren't going to change. The little comments, the cold looks, and how I was always treated as an afterthought in my marriage had always been there. But I ignored it because I loved Mark. I thought things would get better if I kept trying. They didn't. What was supposed to be a relaxing trip to Hilton Head, South Carolina, quickly turned into something else. The resort was beautiful, like something out of a travel magazine, but things with Mark's parents didn't improve. The first night, we went to a nice restaurant, and when I went to sit next to Mark, his dad, Richard, said, "There must be a mistake. She needs her own table." I was confused and asked, "Excuse me?" Susan, his mom, didn't even look up. "It's just how we do things," she said. Mark didn't stand up for me. He just sighed and said, "It's just their way." So I sat alone, thinking it was a one-time thing. But it wasn't. The next morning, I went down to breakfast, expecting to join them. I couldn't find them. I texted Mark, but got no response. Eventually, I found them already sitting at a big table, chatting like everything was fine. I asked, "Why didn't you tell me you were coming down?" Richard barely looked at me and said, "We assumed you'd figure it out." Susan just sipped her coffee and said, "It's just how we do things." Mark acted like this was all normal. That's when I realized I was never part of their family. Mark wasn't on my side. From then on, I sat alone for every meal, and every time they did something fun, I was left out. They even went on a private boat tour and didn't tell me. I found out when I saw their photos on Instagram. They had a fancy wine tasting, and I only learned about it when I saw them dressed up heading out. I asked Mark about it, and his response was always the same. "It's just their way." By the fourth day, I gave up. If they wanted me to be invisible, fine. But I had a plan. That night, while they were out celebrating, I went back to my hotel room. I pulled up my email and started canceling everything. The hotel? Canceled. The rental car? Gone. The dinner reservations? All wiped out. I even called the spa and canceled Susan's appointment. Then I packed my bags, took the rental car, and left. While they were enjoying their perfect vacation, I was driving to Charleston. I booked a luxury suite, ordered room service, and relaxed on my balcony, finally at peace. The next morning, I woke up feeling refreshed. Then my phone started buzzing. Mark, then Susan, then Richard. I turned my phone on silent and smiled. They finally noticed. I imagined the moment they realized what had happened. Richard waking up to a hotel manager at his door. Susan checking her phone and seeing all the cancellations. Mark, confused, hearing his mom yelling at the staff. They had no hotel, no car, and no plans. I checked my messages later. Mark was furious, asking where I was and demanding I fix things. I picked up the phone just for fun. "Where are you?" he demanded. "Charleston." "Charleston? What are you doing there?" "Enjoying my silence." Mark asked if I realized what I'd done. I said yes. He said I'd stranded them. I replied, "Oh no, that must be so uncomfortable." Mark asked me to come back, but I laughed and said, "No, Mark, I really don't." Later, I found out how badly things went for them. They had to find a dingy motel, had no rental car, and paid high prices for Ubers. Their fancy dinner was fully booked. Susan had a tantrum at the spa. Mark sent angry texts later. Mom's furious. She was humiliated at the spa. Dad is losing it over the restaurant. I hope you're happy. I thought that would be the worst of it. Just a little inconvenience, a taste of their own medicine. But then, something interesting happened. A few hours later, my phone buzzed again. It wasn't Mark this time. It was a message from Sarah, Mark's cousin. "Sarah, hey, I heard what happened. Honestly, good for you." I raised an eyebrow, rereading the message. Sarah and I had always gotten along, but she wasn't exactly someone I shared personal stuff with. Me, wait, what do you mean? Her reply made my stomach drop. "Sarah, they did the same thing to Mark's ex-wife." I sat up straight. Mark's ex-wife. He always said they grew apart, that their marriage just didn't work. I never questioned it, but now. Me, what do you mean? Sarah, she went on a family trip with them once. They treated her terribly, ignored her, made her sit at a separate table, and acted like she wasn't there. She left halfway through and filed for divorce a month later. My heart raced. Sarah, I didn't say anything before because I thought you knew, but seeing what they did to you, I realize he never told you, did he? Me? No, he didn't. If he had, I wouldn't have come on this trip. I would have known this wasn't just their way. This was their pattern. And Mark, he knew what was going on, and he let it happen. That night, Mark called again. I picked up. Mark, I need you to fix this. He sounded frustrated. Me? No, you don't understand. Mark, I understand perfectly. I interrupted him. Me? This wasn't about traditions. This was about control. You knew what they were going to do, and you let it happen. Silence. Mark, then who told you that? Me, bingo. I laughed. Mark, so it's true? Silence. Mark, look, my parents can be difficult, but they mean well. Me, Mark, they don't even see me as part of the family. He hesitated. That's when I knew he wasn't going to fight for me. Mark, come back. Me? No. I said it calmly. Me? I think I've already fixed it. I hung up. Afterward, I sat there, staring at my phone, feeling furious. Mark had known all along. He had seen this happen before, and he still let me walk straight into it. But something else gnawed at me. If he'd lied about Rachel, what else had he lied about? I decided to do some digging. I searched Facebook for Mark's ex-wife, Rachel. I had never thought to look her up before, but now I needed answers. Her profile was private, but I found her sister, Lauren, and clicked on a post from 2 years ago, right after Rachel and Mark split. Lauren, never let a man's family destroy you. Never let them convince you you're less than you are. My sister deserved better. We all tried to warn her. Never again. I felt sick. I kept scrolling and found an old comment from Sarah. Sarah, I wish she had listened to us. At least she's free now. Lauren, listen to them. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. I didn't know what to do. Should I message Lauren and ask what really happened? Was I ready for the truth? After a long pause, I took a deep breath and typed. Me. Hey, this is going to sound random, but I think we need to talk. Lauren responded right away. Lauren, I was wondering when you'd reach out. That hit me like a punch. Me. So you know who I am. Lauren, yeah, we've been waiting for this to happen. I froze, fingers hovering over the keyboard. Me. What do you mean? Lauren, Rachel wasn't the first, and she sure wasn't the last. My breath caught. Me. What are you saying? Lauren, Mark has done this before, more than once. His parents have done this before, more than once, and if you're talking to me right now, I'm guessing you've just gone through it too. I felt nauseous. This wasn't just a weird family tradition. It was a game. Mark and his family did this to every woman he brought into his life. They didn't see his partners as family, they saw them as obstacles. And Mark had let it happen every time. Me. Why didn't anyone tell me? Lauren. We tried, but Mark always makes sure his girlfriends stay isolated. He tells them his family just has quirks or traditions. He keeps them from asking too many questions. Did he ever tell you Rachel was the problem? I closed my eyes. He had. He painted Rachel as the one who couldn't get along with his family, who made drama out of nothing. But now I knew the truth. Rachel hadn't been dramatic. She'd been trapped. And now, so had I. I couldn't sleep that night. The realization that I'd wasted years with this man burned in my chest. But something else was nagging at me. Why had Mark called me so many times today? Why was he desperate? At 6:00 a.m., I got my answer. A text popped up from an unknown number. Unknown, Mom, this is Officer Daniels with the Hilton Head Police. We need to speak with you about a missing persons report filed by your husband. I sat up fast, nearly knocking my phone over. Me, missing persons report? I immediately called back. When the officer answered, I blurted out. Me, I'm fine. I'm not missing. Officer, ma'am, are you saying you left voluntarily? Me, yes. I left on my own. My husband knows exactly where I am. He's been calling nonstop. The officer sighed. Officer, your husband reported that you left without explanation and haven't been answering his calls. He said he was concerned for your safety. I clenched my jaw. This wasn't concern. It was control. Mark wasn't worried about me. He was trying to force me back. Me, I am fine. I'm in Charleston. I left Hilton Head by choice. I'm not missing, and I do not want my husband contacting me. Officer, would you like to file a formal request for no further contact? I hesitated. Then finally, I exhaled. Me, yes, I would. That was it. The first legal step to ending my marriage. Not long after, my phone buzzed again. It was a message from Susan. Susan, I can't believe you would humiliate us like this. I laughed. I ignored it. Then another message came. Susan, you made Mark involve the police. Do you have any idea how this looks? Oh, I made Mark involve the police. I rolled my eyes and took another sip of my coffee. Then the messages kept coming. Susan, this scammy has done nothing but try to welcome you. Susan, you're being selfish. Susan, you need to come back and fix this. Susan, if you don't come back, Mark is going to make things very difficult for you. I froze. It wasn't even subtle. It was a threat. I stared at the text, rereading it. This wasn't just about control anymore. This was a fight, and I was supposed to give up. But I wouldn't. Not this time. I cracked my knuckles, took a deep breath, and sent one simple message. Me? Perfect. Let's make things difficult then. Then I booked a conference room in Charleston and invited everyone. Mark, his parents, and Sarah. If they wanted a war, I'd give them one. The next morning, I sat in the conference room, waiting. The table was long and empty except for some water bottles and the heavy silence. I didn't have to wait long. The door slammed open, and Mark stormed in first, his jaw so tight I thought his teeth might break. His parents followed, with Susan's heels clicking sharply and Richard's face already red from anger. Sarah came in last, looking unsure, her arms crossed. She nodded at me, but I didn't know if she was here to help, witness, or just watch the drama unfold. I leaned back in my chair. Glad you could all make it, I said. Mark snapped. What the hell is this? I smiled slowly. A conversation. You've been wanting to talk, so let's talk. Richard scoffed, arms crossed. You think this is funny? No, I replied calmly. I think it's pathetic. You play these sick games with the women in your family, and you finally picked the wrong one. Susan narrowed her eyes. You abandoned us. I laughed. Oh, I abandoned you. That's rich, coming from the people who spent an entire vacation pretending I wasn't there. Mark exhaled, gripping the back of a chair. You're blowing this out of proportion. That was it. That was the moment. I slammed my hands on the table, making Susan flinch. I am your wife. My voice echoed, cold and sharp. Not some stranger. Not an outsider. I am your wife, and you let them treat me like nothing. And you? I pointed at Mark. You knew this wasn't the first time. You knew exactly what was happening, and you let it happen anyway. His face turned pale. Susan quickly cut in with a high-pitched voice. We were just following tradition. I shot back. It's not tradition. It's control. It's a test, and you fail every woman who enters this family. Mark shook his head. You're overreacting. I grabbed my phone, pulled up the messages from Lauren, and threw it onto the table. Read it. He hesitated. Read it. Slowly, Mark picked up the phone and scrolled. I watched as his face tightened with every word. Then he threw the phone down like it burned him. This isn't proof of anything. Richard crossed his arms. You're digging up old stories. It has nothing to do with us. I turned to Susan. Is that right? Because last night you sent me a message threatening me. You told me if I didn't come back, Mark would make things difficult. Susan's mouth snapped shut. Sarah let out a low whistle. Wow. Mark turned to his mother, eyes narrowing. You did what? Susan stiffened. I was trying to make her understand. Understand what? Mark's voice rose. That you've been playing this game for years? That you did the same thing to Rachel? Richard shifted uncomfortably. Susan shot him a look, but it was too late. Mark's jaw twitched. Jesus Christ. And just like that, I saw it, the crack. The tiny shift in his loyalty to his parents. The moment he realized I hadn't been wrong. I had never been wrong. Mark turned back to me. For the first time, he actually looked unsure. I stared at him, waiting for something that mattered to come out of his mouth. But instead, he ran his hands through his hair. I can fix this. My stomach dropped. That was his first instinct, not an apology, not regret, just fixing the situation. I leaned back, exhaling slowly. You really don't get it, do you? Silence. I stood up, grabbed my bag. I'm not coming back, Mark. That snapped him out of it. Wait, what? I'm done. His eyes widened. You're serious? Sarah snorted. Dude, how have you not figured that out by now? Susan's voice rose. This is ridiculous. You're throwing away your marriage over a misunderstanding. I shook my head. No, Susan. You threw it away. You and Richard with your twisted way of treating people. Mark was just too weak to stop it. Mark reached for my arm, but I stepped back. Wait, let's talk about this. I held up my hand. No, Mark. You talk. You make excuses. You let them control you, but I'm done listening. I grabbed my phone and walked to the door. Mark's voice almost broke. Wait, where are you going? I turned back, staring at him one last time. I'm leaving. Susan scoffed. You can't just leave a marriage. I met her gaze, my face unreadable. Watch me. Then I walked out the door. It took 6 months to finalize the divorce. Mark tried everything, begging, blaming, even accusing me of overreacting. But I never looked back. Sarah stayed in touch. She told me things fell apart after I left. Apparently, Mark finally confronted his parents, and it wasn't pretty. Richard called him weak. Susan cried, saying I had brainwashed him. For the first time, Mark saw them for what they really were. But it didn't change anything for me. I was already gone. I moved back to Charleston for good. I found a new apartment, reconnected with old friends, and started over. One night, months later, I got a text from an unknown number. Mark, I see it now, I'm sorry. I stared at it for a long time, then deleted it, because for the first time in years, I was free.
As my sister-in-law stepped into the house, she exclaimed, "This is much nicer than I imagined. If you remodel it, it might even look like a new house." The moment I revealed that this place was inherited from my parents, her attitude visibly became colder. "Does that mean it's in your name? Do you not have any plans to change it to your husband's name now that you're married?" she asked. Having it in my husband's name would be convenient for her. Ever since then, my sister-in-law began to frequently harass me and my sister's family. I am 35 years old, and I hold a manager position at my company. I am married, but I have no children. That day was a rare holiday for me, and I was doing a major cleaning of the house with my sister, her husband, and their son and daughter. My sister's family and mine lived together in my parents' house. After our parents passed away, I was the one who inherited the house. I had to take over the monthly mortgage payments, but I am attached to the house and have always wanted to live here. The mortgage will be paid off soon. My sister moved out for college and lived elsewhere after her marriage. Half a year ago, we had to temporarily move into this house because our previous residence needed some major renovations. This house is spacious but has gradually aged over the years. "This place might need some repairs soon," my sister muttered while cleaning. At that moment, a loud voice came from the entrance. "Sister, are you there? Please open up." Looking outside, I saw my sister-in-law with a lot of luggage. "What happened? What's with the luggage?" I asked, to which she replied loudly from outside the door, "Just hurry up and let me in." When my sister opened the front door, my sister-in-law immediately walked into the living room and sat down on the sofa. When asked why, she bluntly replied, "Because I'm getting a divorce." Her husband works for a major corporation and earns a considerable income, so there had to have been something serious for her to decide on divorce. As I pondered the connection between her coming to our house and her divorce, she said, "Anyway, that's why I'll be living here from now on." The truth is, she had always had her eyes on this house. Changing the name on the deed isn't too difficult, but handing it over to my sister-in-law like that would equate to me abandoning the house. I had anticipated she might do something like this. If I refused, my greedy and arrogant sister-in-law would forcefully demand the change of ownership. Eventually, she might even forcibly change the name herself. Unfortunately, my husband sided with her and wouldn't listen to us. So, I decided to put into action a plan I had thought of before. After exchanging looks with my sister and her husband, I nodded and said, "All right, Then I'll handle the name change for you. Oh, you're quite receptive today, my sister-in-law replied. But she was surprised when my sister's husband interjected. However, there are some issues with changing the ownership. What issues? As my sister-in-law grew more irritated, he explained, when changing property ownership, a specific reason is usually required, such as for inheritance or property sale. So, we will need a concrete reason for the change. Her response to my husband's explanation was dismissive. What do you mean by that? Just make up any reason. But it's not that simple, especially with legal procedures involved at the land registry. Then, shall we say it's a transfer from you to me? That would mean you have to pay gift tax. Gift tax? I don't have that kind of money. As she grew angrier, she confronted my sister's husband. I sighed at her attitude and said, then, how about you buy the house from me? Buy a house when I'm getting divorced? Where would I get the money for that? Well, buying the house would be an asset, and you could sell it later for a large sum, I suggested. Her expression softened, and she smirked mischievously. All right, then I'll buy the house from you. Really? Is that okay for you? But there's another problem. What is it this time? Yes, as my brother-in-law pointed out earlier, there are several issues, I said, exasperated by my sister-in-law's irritable demeanor. My brother-in-law began to explain the second problem. When purchasing the house from me as a family transaction, if the price deviates significantly from the market value, the difference could be considered a gift, potentially incurring gift tax. Upon hearing this, my sister-in-law sighed, taxes again. Seeing her reaction, I suggested, then, we have no choice but to ask a real estate agent to mediate. Mediation? That means we have to pay a brokerage fee, right? Yes, but it aligns the price with the market rate and saves us from the hassle of paperwork. I replied, well, that might be the quickest solution. Then, let's go with that, please. My sister-in-law said, leaving everything to us. However, this was the best choice for us. We contacted a real estate company where my brother-in-law works and a judicial scrivener to proceed with the sale of the house and the change of ownership. While I was searching for a new place to move to, my husband came home. I told my husband about my sister-in-law's intention to live here, and as expected, he was overjoyed. Are you sure that's okay? You always said you didn't get along with my sister. It doesn't matter. I've decided to leave here along with my sister's family. What? I'm asking for a divorce. I've reached my limit with things, including my arrogant sister-in-law and you. What are you saying? I began to explain my reasons for leaving. Shortly after marrying my husband, his sister, whom I had met once at our wedding, suddenly paid us a visit at our home. As soon as she came in, she happily exclaimed, "This house is nicer than I expected. Renovating it might make it like new." As I nodded, I mentioned, I inherited this place from my parents, to which she suddenly took on a look of displeasure. That means it's in your name, right? Don't you plan to change it to your husband's name after marriage? She abruptly asked, leaving me puzzled. Looking back, she might have been plotting something from that moment on. Having the house in my husband's name would have been more convenient for her. But back then, I didn't realize and let the conversation slide, which seemed to anger her. Since then, she developed hostility towards me and my sister's family. During the New Year holidays, when we visited our in-laws, my sister and I were sent shopping by my sister-in-law and forced to pay for everything we were asked to buy. After that experience, we never set foot in our in-laws' house again. However, she continued to show up unannounced at our house, demanding to stay, often barging in. Even after living with my sister's family for half a year, her behavior didn't change. Worse, she started to expect the same treatment from my sister's family without reservation. When I told her, as a married woman, "You should rely on your husband," she snapped back, "That's none of your business. Don't interfere in other people's family affairs." When I asked my husband to do something about his sister, he became upset and said incomprehensibly, "She's been through a lot since getting married. It's probably wife and mother-in-law issues. Try to understand." This was the trigger for me to consider divorce. In addition, one day when I asked my husband about his destination when going out and got no answer, I began to suspect him of infidelity. After discussing it with my sister's family, we decided to distance ourselves from my sister-in-law and husband and to get revenge. For the first step, I hired a detective to investigate my husband's suspected affair. I then began searching for information on the internet to solve the sister-in-law problem. And finally, I found an effective and convincing method. Meanwhile, the results of the investigation into my husband's infidelity arrived, showing clear evidence of his misconduct. If my sister-in-law made the next move, we would be ready to proceed with our plan. Together with my sister's family, I waited eagerly for this decisive opportunity. And today, with my sister-in-law demanding the change in name, which would alter the ownership of my house, the time had come to execute our plan. When my husband returned home, I declared my plans for divorce. "You were cheating, weren't you?" "What? What do you mean?" My husband was completely shocked. However, I continued to cross-examine him calmly and based on my evidence. My sister-in-law had also fallen perfectly into our plan. "Argue or stay silent. It's up to you. I have gathered enough evidence. Don't resist unnecessarily and just sign the divorce papers quickly." But legal battle or mediation, either is fine. The divorce is a done decision. My husband was at a loss for words. At that moment, my sister-in-law appeared and said, "Big brother, what are you dawdling for? If you're free, help me with my luggage. I need you to wait a moment. First, I need my husband to sign these divorce papers." "What? Divorce? What do you mean?" "We've decided to get divorced. If you plan to live here, I don't need to stay." My sister and her husband then followed my lead. "Moreover, we're planning to leave this place too. This house is yours to use as you wish." Hearing my words, my sister-in-law smirked and said, "So it's no longer your house or your sister's house, right?" "Exactly. I have the money from selling the house and the divorce settlement, so finding a new home won't be difficult." Hearing this, my husband signed the divorce papers reluctantly. After receiving the divorce papers, my sister's family and I left our former home. That night, my sister, her husband, and I stayed in a hotel. The next day, we started the house selling process. First, we created the official sales documents through my brother-in-law's real estate company and a lawyer, and proceeded with the sale of the house to my sister-in-law. Of course, my sister-in-law needed to be involved in the contract, but she just complained. "Oh boy, what's this? I don't get it. Just call me when all the documents are ready. I don't care about the content. I just have to pay, right? Changing the ownership to me is all that matters." Eventually, my sister's husband, the lawyer, and I took care of all the procedures, and my sister-in-law disappeared. We didn't come to an agreement, but that was expected. I didn't think she could endure the tedious process of the contract. In the end, she only participated in the initial stages of confirming the purchase intent and signing the final documents. Afterwards, we completely moved our belongings out of the house so that we could hand it over. At the same time, the divorce was finalized, and my ex-husband had to pay me $25,000 in damages. After that, the payment for the house was transferred in full to my account from my former sister-in-law. She was ignorant about the mortgage and probably in debt now, but that was no longer my concern. A few weeks later, everything was settled. When I visited the house again, now owned by my ex-husband and former sister-in-law, I could hear their heated argument from outside. "It's because of your debt that I'm working nonstop, and I'm being chased down for the damages I owe. I didn't know that the house was that expensive. It's common sense." "Well, I didn't know that, so it can't be helped. Don't make excuses. You should have learned this yourself. Now I have to pay for the house because of you, and I still owe for damages." Hearing the unexpected word damages, I sensed an opportunity. I rang the doorbell and prepared to face my ex-husband. "Oh, it's you. What do you want?" "I'm busy right now." "What do I want?" "I'm here to collect this month's payment." "How? What do you mean this month's payment?" "I've already paid this month's portion, including the house payment." "I've received that, but there's still something you haven't paid for, right?" As my ex-husband looked puzzled at my words, my former sister-in-law appeared from the back, directing her anger at me. "What are you doing? You didn't tell me a word about the price of this house." "What do you mean? About this house? I wasn't informed it was so expensive. Didn't you read the documents I sent?" I wasn't paying attention to that. Indeed, I had sent all the necessary documents to my former sister-in-law, but it was her responsibility to read them. I sold the house at a fair price. My ex-husband seemed to agree as he told her to be quiet to avoid further complications. Then he asked me, "What were you referring to about this month's payment?" "I'm talking about the land leasing fee for the land that this house is on." Both my ex-husband and former sister-in-law looked puzzled. They clearly didn't understand this fact. I had sold only the house, retaining the leasing rights to the land. This meant that while the house belonged to my former sister-in-law, I owned the land that it was built on and was therefore entitled to receive a monthly fee. The land rental fee is usually determined through negotiation, but since my former sister-in-law had overlooked the procedure, I set it at $3,000 per month. Both my ex-husband and former sister-in-law were shocked and outraged upon hearing this amount. Unbelievable. Paying $3,000 every month for the land? Yes, but you signed the contract. Also, you'll be responsible for the property taxes for the house, as stated in the contract. Didn't you read it? This is ridiculous. If that's the case, we'll just sell the house. Unfortunately, that's not an option. As long as I, as the landowner, don't permit the sale, you can't sell the house due to the leaseholder rights. Explaining this left my former sister-in-law in utter disbelief. Really? Is that true? Well, it's up to you. Either pay the $3,000 every month or give up the house. I told her. Given their debts for the damages and the house purchase, it was clear that they couldn't afford this new monthly fee. Ultimately, my former sister-in-law chose to return the house to me. Since this trouble was caused by my ex-husband and former sister-in-law, they bore all the transaction fees. Thus, we managed to reclaim our house. Apparently, my former sister-in-law had borrowed the money for the house from her parents, who, upon learning about this incident, were outraged at both her and my ex-husband and demanded repayment. Currently, my ex-husband is juggling daytime work and a night job, and my former sister-in-law is working at a supermarket and a night job as well. What's more, my former sister-in-law was apparently having an affair, which was discovered by her now ex-husband, leading to demands for further damages. I was the one who told her husband. Since then, my sister's family finished their remodeling and returned to their own home, and I have been enjoying living alone. Oh, the car that I just bought. I'll take care of it. Since the payment contract is in your name, I'm counting on you to keep up with the loan payments. Actually, I've met a woman I'm really attracted to. As he told me this, my husband disappeared like mist before my eyes. All that was left in my hands was my only daughter and a massive debt of $500,000. My name is Beth, and I am 40 years old. I'm a woman who balances housework and my job at a business site in the metropolitan area. I have a small family with my spouse Chris, who is the same age, and my 11-year-old daughter, Rose. Since she was young, Rose has been exceptionally bright. By the time she entered elementary school, she was already proficient in reading and writing English as well as in Spanish, and she knew various encyclopedias by heart. She possesses such an enigmatic talent and would challenge me like a debater on news topics. Her academic performance is outstanding among her classmates, and her thinking speed is fast. She's so intelligent to the extent that I can't believe she's my own child. As a parent, I am simply amazed by her brilliance. On the other hand, Chris was always lazy and fickle, never sticking to any job for a long time, always quitting after a short period. He changed jobs at numerous companies, and just when it seemed like his salary was finally increasing, he would switch jobs again, returning to a starting salary. Our savings never grew, and out of anxiety for the future, I once thought about quitting my job to focus on raising Rose and developing her potential. But if I were to leave my job, our household finances would collapse. Thus, I have reluctantly continued to work full-time all these years. However, recently Chris's job finally stabilized. He surpassed his previous longest tenure of 1 year by a significant margin, now continuing to work at the same place for 3 years, and he has secured a stable income as a full-time employee. Previously, he had been simply lazy. But something changed, and he began to desire to visit various places as a family, to nurture Rose's intellectual curiosity, and to create family memories. We took a leap of courage and upgraded from the small car we used to drive to a spacious wagon worth $60,000. This wagon was a large vehicle that could also be used for camping, with a spacious interior that allows for a simple bed to be installed inside. But since Chris, who had just become a full-time employee, could not pass the loan credit check, I ended up taking out the loan. I wasn't particularly surprised by this. After all, the mortgage was also in my name. And then, after a long wait, the day of delivery for the new wagon finally arrived. That day, I couldn't possibly take time off from work, so I had Chris go pick up the car. During my shift, I saw a message from Chris on my mobile phone, and my heart froze in an instant. I'll take care of the new car. Since the payment contract is in your name, I'm counting on you to keep up with the loan payments. I couldn't understand the sudden text message and immediately called Chris. I didn't expect him to answer the phone right away, but to my surprise, he did. What do you want? It's not a matter of what I want. What does this message mean? It means exactly what it says. Chris's voice was indifferent, and I became even more confused. And then Chris revealed something I could never have imagined. Actually, I've fallen for someone seriously. What? What are you talking about? I asked with a trembling voice, shocked. It was meant to be just a little fun at first, but now I want to start over in life with this person. So, this is goodbye to you. With those words, Chris tried to end the call, but just before he hung up, he revealed something even more shocking. Oh, right. I still have the divorce papers that you signed during our previous argument, so I'll go ahead and submit those. With that, before I could say anything, Chris ended the call. I listened to the dial tone in a daze, facing the reality of betrayal, and could only stand there in place, unable to move. Afterward, no matter how many times I tried to contact Chris, he never responded. Unable to focus on work, I headed home, wishing it wasn't real. The truth was, I did sign the divorce papers in a fit of anger during a previous heated argument. When I opened the drawer where I kept those papers, I confirmed that they were indeed gone. Now, I was faced with the repayment of a huge debt of about $500,000, $60,000 for the car loan, and approximately $440,000 for the mortgage. I understood the situation but couldn't bring myself to accept it. I tried contacting Chris numerous times, but whether he was ignoring me or not, he never replied even though he read the messages. It was as if he had vanished from the face of the earth. Rose, who notices even the smallest things, couldn't have been unaware, and a few days later, she looked into my face slowly after dinner. Mom, are you okay? You've been looking a bit unwell lately, haven't you? I was about to pretend to be fine, but knowing that Rose could see right through me, I decided to be honest. Yes, I'm a little tired. It seemed like Rose knew I had more to say. Mom, that habit of rubbing your hands, that's a sign you're lying, isn't it? Rose pointed out with her sharp observational skills, and I couldn't help but smile. She continued to speak. Dad hasn't been home since the day before yesterday. Does that have anything to do with it? Faced with Rose's clear gaze, I hesitated inside. Then, I took a deep breath to tell Rose the whole truth. I thought it was impossible to keep hiding it anyway. So, I told her everything that had happened. After hearing it all, Rose simply replied with a sigh, I see. I thought Dad might do something like this. Really? You're not surprised? I asked. Yeah, I'm not surprised. I thought a day like this would come, Rose said. Her calm demeanor, as if she understood everything, was contrary to the turmoil I felt. But deep down, I knew the fact that her parents had split must be hurting her. I apologized to Rose in my heart for my helplessness and worked with renewed vigor the next day as if to sweep everything away. However, inherently not very resilient and mentally fragile, I soon began to suffer physically and mentally from the stressful situation and started to fall ill. On the day of a major inventory at work, I found it difficult to stand and finally collapsed to the floor, exhausted. Is something wrong? Sorry, I feel a bit sick. I'll take a little break. After muttering those words, I lost consciousness. I could hear my colleagues speaking, but I was out cold. When I regained consciousness, I was greeted by a white ceiling and numerous tubes entwined around my body. Apparently, I was in a hospital room, and my colleagues had called an ambulance for me. The diagnosis required further detailed tests, and I was forced to be hospitalized. As I cursed my weakness and wet the pillow with my tears, the usually calm Rose rushed into the hospital room. As I turned around wiping my tears, Rose appealed with a tearful voice. "Mom, are you okay? You're not going to die suddenly, right?" Seeing Rose's usually calm demeanor disturbed for once, I reassured her while gently stroking her hair. "Don't think about that. There's no way I would leave you alone." "Really? That's a relief." I thought my heart would stop. Rose breathed a sigh of relief. She was only 12 years old. For Rose's sake, I resolved to regain my health. But my health was more seriously compromised than I could have imagined. After the diagnosis showed a dark shadow on my organs, the doctor told me it could be malignant, so surgery is advisable, and I decided to undergo the operation. The recovery after the surgery went surprisingly well. Fortunately, the tumor turned out to be benign. I would need regular follow-ups, but I was able to leave the hospital a month after the surgery. On the day of my discharge, exactly 1 month after Chris's disappearance, I returned home to find an envelope in the mailbox. Inside was a reminder notice about the car loan. There should have been enough funds in my bank account, and it didn't make sense that I couldn't make even a mince payment. That was strange. As I hastily checked my internet banking, I couldn't believe the numbers displayed. The balance in my account was only $3.21. This must be a mistake, I thought, and repeatedly clicked the refresh button. But the result was the same. A cold figure of $3.21 appeared on the screen. What? No way. In my memory, there should have been over $40,000 left. While struggling to contain my agitation, I checked the drawer where I kept the bank book only to find it empty. Chris. The perpetrator was obvious, but his whereabouts were unknown, and I had no idea how to proceed. Even disposing of the car was impossible without having it in hand. Since Chris left this house, misfortune has continued. Thinking this, my spirits fell. Rose saw me like this and gently stroked my shoulder. "Mom, you look pale. Are you feeling unwell again?" I could no longer hide the situation from Rose. "I'm physically fine. But Dad didn't just take the car, he took all our savings too. I'm just recovering from an illness and can't go back to work right away, so I'm in quite a pickle." Hearing this, Rose returned with words of encouragement that I hadn't even considered. "Mom, it's okay. We are both alive after all. I'll even lie about my age to look for a job on the internet if I have to. You can get good pay with programming." Watching my 12-year-old daughter trying so hard to cheer me up, I scolded myself for my disappointment. "I'm sorry for worrying you. Mom will do her best." As I said this with a smile, Rose, unable to hide her joy, mischievously suggested, "Well, how about we start by taking back the car from Dad?" I turned around at Rose's sudden proposal. "How can we get it back? The car is registered under Mom's name, right?" "Yes, that's right." Still not grasping what she was planning. Then, as I listened to Rose's thought-out plan, I was impressed. But immediately after, worry welled up. "The problem is, we don't know where Dad is." Looking down, Rose said to me, "Don't worry, I know." "Really? GPS. Remember, we installed it on Dad's phone." Then I remembered. We had given Rose a child's mobile phone and installed GPS tracking apps on our smartphones to avoid the same situation if Rose ever got lost. I've been tracking Dad's movements with that app. He's been moving around a lot. I see. But how will we catch him? Rose secretly smiled and said, "Don't worry, I've already prepared a plan." Then, as I heard about Rose's plan, I was taken aback by her intelligence. Rose even knew the details about Chris's mistress. "Mom, let's give a little punishment to Dad who had betrayed us." And so, Rose and I prepared to take action. Days passed, and one day my cell phone rang. "Is that you, Beth? I need help." "Sorry, who is this?" It was Chris. When I pretended not to know him, he became irritated and said, "What's this joke? I'm your husband. Right now, I'm stopped by the police on the street and being questioned. If this continues, they'll take me to the police station. Come quickly and explain." Can't be helped. Understood. Wait there." Knowing that Chris was nearby thanks to the GPS, Rose and I headed to his location. Chris was standing beside the car, being questioned by an officer. I approached the officer and asked, "Could you let us talk for a bit?" And then asked them to leave for a moment. Chris seemed uncomfortable and urged Rose and me to get in the car. Inside sat a young woman, his mistress, glaring at us, but frankly, that was irrelevant. After closing the doors, Chris let out a deep sigh and said, "I'm glad you came. But why were those people interrogating me? Why did I do it?" "Because the car was stolen, so I reported it to the police." Chris's eyes widened in surprise. "What? Why would you do that? Why?" "If someone's car is gone, they naturally report it to the police." Chris still seemed unable to grasp the situation, continuing to insist that between spouses, crimes aren't an issue, and that property is shared, but we were already legally divorced. Such excuses were unacceptable. "You're the one who filed the divorce papers. It's a problem if you use someone else's car without permission. I just borrowed it for a bit." "Really? You just borrowed it for a bit? Maybe you should have given it back then." As I reached out my hand, Chris seemed to understand and reluctantly handed over the car keys. Rose, who had been silent until now, spoke up. "Dad, why did you leave us and go off with her?" He surely never expected to be directly questioned by his child. Chris was dumbfounded and rendered speechless. At that moment, the woman began to respond with a sneer to Rose. "Clearly, it's because I'm younger and more attractive than your mom. He's totally into me and doesn't need you guys anymore." "So, I didn't ask you." Rose cut her off with a forceful shout. "Dad, answer me. I want to hear it from you." The woman fell silent at Rose's unexpected response, and Chris also remained silent. "If you can't answer, I'll call the police." When Rose declared this, Chris suddenly started to panic. "Wait, I'm sorry. I'll talk." The woman's name was Megan. She had joined Chris's workplace as a new employee 4 months ago. They hit it off at a welcome party for new staff and became close quickly, I was told. Shockingly, Megan was already pregnant, and Chris had decided to leave our family to start a new path with her. As for the car, he was apparently attached to it and had been unable to sell it. "You've been visiting quite a few places, it seems." "Yes, just a little trip." "Wait, how do you know that?" "Do you remember the GPS app? The one I installed earlier on?" When I said that, Chris seemed to recall the fact and was visibly disappointed. "I did that on purpose. Dad was acting differently, so I suggested using the GPS." Hearing Rose's words, I, too, was inwardly astonished at her intelligence as I listened by her side. Then, I confronted Chris directly and ordered in a somewhat stern tone. "Admit you stole my $40,000 and return everything right here, right now. That money was part of our shared marital assets." He defended. "How can you say that? That money was from my savings before I was married." It appeared that Chris had already spent the $40,000 with Megan. Brimmed with anger, I could not conceal my surprise and pressed further. "Not only did you use the car, but you also spent my savings. This is not a simple crime that can be overlooked. Or did you borrow that money as well?" During this time, Megan was quietly trying to leave. However, as she stepped out of the car, she let out a shriek. Standing before her were her parents, their faces filled with anger. "Why are my parents here?" Because I asked them to come, Rose said calmly. In fact, while I was in the hospital, it seemed Rose had gone to Chris's workplace, pretending to cry. Dad has left our home. Touched by her act, one of the employees gave her the address of Megan's parents' home. Chris and Megan had been openly affectionate at work, always together like a couple. And the fact that they left the company at the same time had raised suspicions of an inappropriate relationship. Hey, old hag. I showed your photo to your parents, and they agreed to talk. Megan had no room left to be shocked at being called old hag. Then, I asked another question. Megan, your belly is quite noticeable. When's the baby due? At that moment, Megan's complexion changed, and all eyes turned to her. Yes, the baby is due in 3 months. That's quite soon. 1, 2, 3. Huh? The math doesn't add up. Chris looked at us, puzzled. What do you mean? It's strange. How can someone with children not understand? The normal pregnancy term is about 9 months. Even if you met this woman and she got pregnant immediately 4 months ago, why would the baby be born in 7 months? Chris seemed to finally grasp the situation. He began to tremble. Megan, did you deceive me? Megan opened her mouth as if to argue. I never thought I'd be caught here. I thought I could deceive someone as simple as you. That's not a joke. You've ruined everything for me. Chris and Megan started an unsightly argument. As this scene unfolded, we called the police again. Soon, a police car arrived. Please, I don't want to deal with the police, Chris pleaded with a pained voice, but Rose and I only gave him a cold look. After you've paid for your crimes, we'll take our time getting the money back. I know where you work. Compensation, child support, half the mortgage, plus the $40,000 I saved. You'll work hard to pay it all back. As Megan watched Chris being taken away by the police, I declared, since you're aware of everything, you'll be considered an accomplice to the theft. If Chris can't repay the money, the burden will fall on you. Be prepared for that. At my words, Megan trembled uncontrollably, looking to her parents for help, but they were in no way going to help her. In this way, we claimed our victory over the odious Chris and Megan. Though they were held accountable for their crimes, due to being first offenders and showing remorse, they were granted bail. However, this was just the beginning of their ordeal of repayment. I managed to extract the full amount they owed me and ensured that Chris would also pay Rose a monthly child support of $600. I arranged a job for Chris at a warehouse subcontracted by my company, so that his income would be directly channeled into repaying me. Although I was also damaged by these events, my health has gradually improved, and now I am back to attending my workplace energetically. Rose and I work together every day. She helps earnestly with the household chores. Just like her name suggests, as her mother, I truly wish for Rose to have a beautiful and blossoming future. If you won't listen to me, I'm not above considering divorce. With such a self-centered statement from my husband, I've come to feel that I no longer want to be involved with him. I've decided to accept the option of divorce that he proposed. He looked at me contentedly, unaware of what the future holds. My name is Amy. I'm 35 years old, married for 5 years, and living with my husband. We've been wanting children, but haven't been blessed with any. We considered fertility treatments, but ultimately decided to wait for it to happen naturally due to my husband's views. Even if we can't have children, living our lives together is a life in itself, he said, which lightened my heart a bit. After we got married, both of my husband's parents passed away one after the other, so we didn't have time to focus on treatment. Truth be told, my husband has always been bossy. We were originally a boss and a subordinate at work. In front of relatives, he calls me a foolish wife and scolds me harshly for any mistakes. This relationship has continued even after we became husband and wife. Saying this might make my husband seem like a bad person, but he has his kind moments too. When he was my superior, he would give me precise advice and guidance during work failures or difficulties, and he has thanked me for my efforts. One particularly memorable moment was when he encouraged me after I lost my beloved grandfather, which deepened our relationship and eventually led to our marriage. After marriage, I quit my job to become a housewife. Amy, I'm home. Welcome back. You must be tired. My husband comes home after 9 p.m. His responsibilities as a manager are heavy, and he works late almost every day. You've had a tough day again. Thank you for your hard work, I would say as I tidy up his clothes and socks. He sinks into the sofa, too tired to reply, and remains quiet. This has become his daily routine. I start preparing dinner so he can eat as soon as possible. Once the meal and a fork are ready, he silently begins to eat. After finishing his meal in about 10 minutes, he heads to the bath. I prepare a bath towel and underwear for him and clean up after the meal. Then, my husband goes straight to the bedroom after his bath. He's always been a man of few words, but since his promotion, he seems more exhausted, and our conversations have become almost non-existent. Yet, I deeply trust and love him because he was there for me when I was at my lowest. I lost my father in middle school and my mother right after entering high school. My grandfather took me in and raised me like his own daughter. I loved my kind and warm grandfather with all my heart. When I became a working adult, I strongly wished to repay my grandfather for his kindness by taking him on trips and enjoying delicious meals together. The days I spent with my grandfather were incredibly happy, and I always wished for his health. However, 3 years into my career, my grandfather passed away from lung cancer, leaving me completely alone. Though I knew we would have to part ways someday, I never expected it to be so soon. I wanted to do more for my grandfather and spend more time with him. Overwhelmed by grief, I spent many nights crying. It was then that my boss at the time, who is now my husband, noticed my distress and supported me. My husband listened to me and offered comforting words, saying, "That must have been tough. You have done well." I'm truly grateful that he was my superior. Even though he's usually strict, he was particularly warm and encouraging at that moment. I'm convinced from the bottom of my heart that my husband truly has a warm heart. This fact is clear to me. That's why I sincerely wish to continue supporting my husband going forward. That's how I've been feeling lately. But then, something happened one afternoon on a day off. Our home phone rang. "Hello, yes. Hey, it's your brother-in-law." The caller was my husband's brother. "Oh, it's been a while. What's up?" "Actually, I need to talk to my brother." "Is he there?" "Yes, just a moment." I relayed the message to my husband, who was relaxing in the living room. "There's a call for you." "Hello, hey, how are you? What's up?" Unusually, my husband started smiling as soon as he began talking to his brother. He always shows special affection towards his brother, who is 15 years younger than him, got married to a beautiful woman 2 years ago and seems to be living a happy life. But what could have happened? Really? Is that so? Are you okay? My husband's tone suddenly became serious. I was curious about what was going on. "Understood. If you're ever in trouble, don't hesitate to say something. You know, I'm your brother." With that, my husband ended the call. "What happened? Is everything okay?" "It seems like my brother lost his job." "What? He was fired?" I was shocked. I hadn't expected this. "Yes, I heard the company's situation wasn't great, but to be fired." My husband sat down, disappointed. I couldn't hide my own shock. My brother-in-law is very different from my husband. He's gentle and calm, always humble. He treats me like his real sister, and even when my husband belittles me in front of relatives, he'd say, "Brother, don't say things like that. It will make Amy sad," and apologize to me for my husband's rudeness. His wife is also wonderful, and I have a very positive impression of them as a couple. That he was fired. I wondered how we could possibly support my brother-in-law and his wife. I was filled with a desire to help and support them. "Hey, is there anything I can do?" Then, my husband looked at me coldly. "What can you do?" "Well, I was thinking if there's anything we can do to help cheer up your brother a bit." My husband sighed deeply at my suggestion. "You're really useless, aren't you? You might not understand because you lack social experience, but this is their toughest time." Saying thoughtlessly that we should help without understanding the situation is something I'd prefer outsiders to refrain from. His overly aggressive stance made me reflexively argue back. It seems my words intended as kindness angered him. "Outsider? Aren't I part of the family too?" I retorted to my husband. "Family? You are my wife, but you have no relation to my brother. Irrelevant. An outsider." His words pierced my heart deeply. It was the first time my husband had been so aggressive. The fact that his brother had lost his job must have been a huge shock to him. However, I thought there was no need for him to speak like that. "Just don't do anything unnecessary," he said before leaving the house. After that, my husband became even stricter towards me. "What is this? You should learn from my brother's wife. What have you been doing at home today?" While at home, my brother's wife manages to keep everything in order and perfectly handles the household chores. I had never seen my husband be so unreasonable before. What on earth happened? Can you just calm down a bit? What has gotten into you? I finally voiced my opinion to my husband. Quiet. Everything has become a mess because of you. My husband uttered such nonsensical things. It was incomprehensible. Eventually, we stopped having conversations or even exchanging glances, and the distance between us as a couple grew wider. Gradually, I began to doubt our relationship. On one such day, my husband was packing in the morning. Like doing a major cleaning, he sorted necessary from unnecessary items, and garbage bags piled up. I wondered what he was doing. However, our relationship had recently become so strained that I didn't have the energy to speak to him, so I didn't say anything about his actions. Unusually, my husband spoke to me. Hey, what are you doing? Get ready to. What? Ready for what? We're moving. We're giving this house to my brother and his wife. What are you talking about? According to my husband, we were to give our house, where we lived, to his brother and his wife, who were struggling after he lost his job. What? What do you mean? Don't do something so arbitrary. Shut up. Don't defy me. My husband shouted at me. However, I wasn't fazed. Didn't you want to do something for my brother too? That's completely different, isn't it? If we're giving away this house, where are we supposed to live? I asked my husband this question amidst my confusion. He replied nonchalantly, we can think about that later. What's important now is that my brother is facing a severe hardship. He needs the support of his brother right now. My husband was proceeding with things in a very self-centered manner, as if his decision was absolute. However, I knew that my brother-in-law was not the kind of person to kick us out and live in this house boldly. They are not like that. Why would my husband make such a decision? As I harbored this question, my husband said something unexpected to me. If you keep resisting, you're no longer needed in this house. My husband coldly stated. The next day, while I was irritably cleaning my husband's room, I found a completed divorce application. I had never imagined that my husband was trying to end our marriage. I was completely stunned by this unexpected action from my husband. But somewhere in my heart, I came to understand that this situation might be a meaningful turning point for us as a couple. I felt that there was no prospect of our relationship recovering if I stayed with my husband any longer. Therefore, I picked up the divorce application that I had dropped to the floor in shock and silently signed it. My husband would never dream that I would actually file for divorce. Imagining this unexpected turn of events, I somewhat smirked to myself. After signing that night, I finally resolved to confront my husband. Listen, do you remember that this house isn't your property? I asked him, and he responded with a puzzled, huh? This house is where I lived with my grandfather, and the land was inherited from him, who has passed away. Did you forget that I inherited it? My words left my husband visibly surprised. Considering this house is in my name, how do you plan to transfer it to your brother? I'd like to know. I pressed on with my questions. Well, my husband began to falter. Did you forget that fact? You started living in my house before we were married because you thought paying rent was a waste. I've been paying the property taxes on this house and land every year. You've never once contributed, have you? And yet, you decide to give it away without consulting me. I challenged him. No, that's because. He stumbled over his words. Enough. Once this application is submitted, the divorce will be official. Then, we'll truly be strangers. I declared calmly, presenting the divorce application in front of him. Wait, let's talk this over calmly, he said hastily. Calm down? That's my line. I'm appalled that you'd prepare a divorce application so easily. Your selfishness is astonishing. I unleashed all the grievances I had been holding back. I had once loved my husband wholeheartedly and believed he loved me too. But perhaps that was my misunderstanding. I never expected our marriage could end so easily. Amy, wait, you're misunderstanding something. Let's talk this through properly. Talk about what exactly? It was you who proposed divorce, wasn't it? I no longer have any love left for you. Declaring so, I carefully placed the divorce application in an envelope. I planned to submit it to the city hall first thing in the morning, using the weekend. My husband collapsed to the floor in dismay. I never imagined it would come to this, he murmured in a dazed voice. Without any sympathy for him, I firmly stated, this is my house. Leave quickly. Once the divorce application is submitted, we will be strangers. It's impossible for strangers to live under the same roof. My husband continued to resist until the moment he left the house, but my resolve was firm. He was now a stranger. There was no reason for sympathy. Even as my husband pleaded with tears, my heart was unmoved. Eventually, he left the house as if resigning himself. Our divorce became quickly known at his workplace. He began to receive cold looks, and various rumors sparked by the divorce spread, seemingly making him lose his place at work. Who spread such rumors? I merely answered questions from his colleagues and subordinates, without taking any further actions. Then, one day, half a year after the divorce, on my way back from visiting a real estate agency, I unexpectedly encountered an unwelcome person. It was my former husband, now to be referred to as my ex-husband. It appeared as if he had been waiting for me to come out of the real estate agency. His behavior gave me an eerie feeling. Because he persistently followed me, I couldn't ignore him, and I ultimately chose to speak with him. Enough already. If you have something to say it quickly. I pressed him for an answer. Amy, actually, I've been resenting you for a long time. My husband glared at me and suddenly said this. What? I was baffled by his sudden statement. As he explained, it turned out that my husband blamed me for his brother's job loss. How is that my fault? I asked him. Ever since we got married, misfortunes have piled up. That's what he said. Indeed, since our marriage, his parents had passed away, and he had also injured himself, among other misfortunes. However, his father had been hospitalized before our marriage, and his mother had always been frail. Moreover, his injury was due to him falling while drunk, breaking his wrist, which was entirely his own fault. Despite this, he seemed to believe I was the cause of his misfortune. Learning that my husband blamed all his bad luck on me left me utterly astounded. So, you hated me because you thought I was the cause of your misfortune? I forgave you, thinking you were just clumsy, but you actually just resented me. I was disappointed with his attitude. He always blamed others, a truly self-centered person. Without any basis, he just blamed others. I couldn't understand how he managed to hold a managerial position at work. I was worried if his subordinates were also unfairly blamed for unreasonable reasons. When had the superior I once trusted changed into such a person? And I felt a bit pitiful for having married such a person. But since divorcing you, bad luck has indeed continued. What kind of bad luck specifically? When I asked, he rolled up his sleeve to show me. His skin was scarred from burns. Actually, there was a fire in the apartment I lived in 3 months ago. Not only that, I also lost my wallet, and I've been making mistakes at work. Moreover, things haven't been going well with my brother recently, and we haven't been in contact. In other words, his misfortune continued even after our divorce. It's no surprise. Honestly, even hearing about his troubles, I couldn't muster any sympathy for his misfortune, because all of it was a result of his own actions. It had nothing to do with me. Please, Amy, I want you to come back. I'm nothing without you. Remember? We were together as a couple, and when you were working as a salaryman, I supported you in many ways, right? And when your grandfather passed away, I was there to support you a lot, he said, trying to guilt-trip me. The misfortune you're facing is the result of your own actions, right? Why don't you reflect on yourself? You should really do something about your bad habit of always blaming others, I told him and walked away. Amy, wait, Amy, he called out, trying to stop me, but I pretended not to know him and disappeared into the crowd. About a week later, I received a call from the person who used to be my brother-in-law. Amy, I guess I can't call you sister anymore. Actually, I have something to talk about regarding my brother. According to my brother-in-law, the decision to give our house to his brother was made unilaterally by my husband. My brother-in-law and his wife knew nothing about the plan. My brother has always had a tendency to show off, and I've been worried about his personality for a long time. The way he treated you, Amy, was terrible, and it was painful to watch as his brother. He said, he truly was a kind-hearted person. I wonder why there's such a difference in personality between the brothers. I don't know if it's my place to say this, but I feel you made the right decision by divorcing. I hope you find happiness, Amy. Thank you so much. That means a lot to me. Later, I heard that my former brother-in-law fortunately found a job quickly and seemed to be managing to make ends meet. I was truly relieved. I've decided to keep some distance from my brother. It seems my brother-in-law had his own thoughts. He mentioned gradually reducing interactions with his brother, who was my ex-husband. This was why my ex-husband had lost contact with his younger brother. After the divorce, being distanced by his closest brother, my ex-husband found himself in a state of loneliness. I hope one day he can understand the consequences of his actions. Before that, I have to completely disappear from my ex-husband's life. On the day I encountered my ex-husband, I had just signed a contract with a real estate agent to rent out the house I inherited from my grandfather. The house was too large for me to live in alone. However, I couldn't bear to part with the house filled with memories of my grandfather. I hoped to let someone who wanted to live there use the house. I I changed my phone number and address, cutting off all ties with my ex-husband. Life still holds many possibilities for me. After all, I am only 35 years old. My name is Lindsay. I'm a 29-year-old company employee, and this year means I'm getting older still. I met Jake, a year older than me, through friends, and we decided to marry 6 months after we started dating. Jake, who made a name for himself in tennis during his student days, is an active person who continues to play tennis even now. As I was in the tennis club during my student days, we immediately found common ground together. Once we started dating, we would often play tennis together on the weekends. One day, after our date, Jake proposed to me and we decided to get married. It's been almost 3 years since we got married. We don't have children, but we bought an apartment after getting married and have been living together ever since. Both of us work, and while we aren't struggling financially, we can't say that we're wealthy either. We're living a happy life. However, something happened between us that shattered my peaceful days. One day, Jake suddenly asked me to come to his parents' house. Surprised, I hurried there to find Jake, his parents, and an unknown woman waiting for me. As I struggled to understand the situation, Jake suddenly knelt down and said, "Lindsay, I'm truly sorry. The truth is, I've been involved with this woman here, Olivia. Last week, we found out that Olivia is pregnant. I feel responsible for her and the baby. So I think it's better that we separate. I'm sorry, but I want a divorce." Jake shocked me with this revelation. Exposed to his infidelity, the pregnancy, and faced with his demands for divorce, I was stunned. That was when my mother-in-law spoke to me. "Lindsay, please forgive Jake. Yes, he cheated, but the problem lies with you too. You and Jake weren't really a good match from the beginning. So, I'm sorry, but please forget about him." And my father-in-law added, "Olivia's father is an executive at a major company. A man in a totally different position from someone like your poor father. I think you know who's more suitable for our son." I couldn't believe it. Jake's father belittled not only me, but also my father too. Normally, parents would put the blame on their son for cheating, but Jake's parents didn't seem to think that way. Instead, they seemed to think it was natural for us to divorce, and that their son had done nothing wrong. I took the divorce papers and said, "I understand what you all want to say. Being with people who have such warped thoughts might affect me too. I'm shocked at how you make it seem like I'm the villain despite Jake's infidelity. Don't worry, I'll file these divorce papers myself. I'll leave the rest to a lawyer." And with that, I quickly left the scene. As I left, my father-in-law mockingly said, "A poor person hiring a lawyer? What a waste of time and money, when she doesn't even have any. She shouldn't bite off more than she can chew." Ha ha ha. Ignoring him, I left his parents' house and immediately went to City Hall to file the divorce papers. At least I was able to end my marriage with Jake. The next day, surprisingly, Jake and Olivia came to my apartment. Seeing me, Jake said, "Oh, you're still here? You haven't even packed your things. You're taking your time, aren't you?" Hearing this, Olivia also looked at me curiously. I was furious at Jake's words. "What are you talking about? You're the one who should be taking it slow. This is my house, so you should be the one to leave. The movers are coming soon to take all your belongings to your parents' house. If there's anything you don't want them to touch, you should take it now," I retorted. Hearing this, Jake suddenly panicked. "What? This is my house. The ownership should be in my name," he exclaimed. I was dumbfounded. After all, this apartment was bought in my name. I had already told Jake about this, and about my family's background before we got married. But it seems that Jake is the type to conveniently forget things that don't suit him. Perhaps this carefree nature is why he was easily swayed by Olivia. I showed the deed to the apartment and my name was clearly written on it. Jake's face quickly changed upon seeing it. Meanwhile, Olivia's face began to cloud over with anger. "Jake, what is this all about? This is completely different from what you told me before. Were you deceiving me?" Olivia began to confront him. This is strange. What's happening?" Jake responded in confusion. That's not an answer. Explain yourself. Olivia pressed on. First, this is my house, so please take your argument outside. And just so you know, Jake has various debts. So if you're planning to marry him, be prepared for that burden. I calmly stated the facts to Olivia. Hearing this, Olivia seemed about to say something, but I didn't care and kicked both of them out of the room, slamming the door behind them. After a while, I could hear them arguing outside the door, but it eventually quieted down. About an hour later, the movers finally arrived and took all of Jake's belongings to his parents' house. The room was now clean, and I was relaxing in the newly organized space. But it was short-lived. Suddenly, the intercom rang repeatedly. I cautiously opened the door with the chain lock still on, and my mother-in-law was standing there. Hello, is there something you need? Lindsay, why did you keep such an important thing a secret? What are you talking about? I can't believe it, but Jake just told me that this apartment is in your name and that your parents are the owners of that famous restaurant chain. It seemed Jake finally remembered my family's circumstances. What about it? If I had known, I would never have let this divorce happen. A daughter from such a wealthy family, we would love to have you back in our family. Lindsay, please, reconsider and start over with Jake. I was shocked and at a loss for words at her outrageous request. I couldn't possibly agree to what she was asking. You really have a terrible way of thinking about things. Am I not a human being? Are you only interested in money? I'm sorry, but I don't want anything more to do with you. There's nothing more to talk about, so please leave, I said and attempted to close the door. But my mother-in-law, infuriated by my attitude, raised her voice in anger. Don't be so arrogant. I'm giving you my permission to reconcile your differences. Fix things with him right now. I won't leave this spot until you agree to get back together. Open this door immediately. She said this, pounding on the door repeatedly. I decided that I couldn't handle this alone and called the police. They came and took my mother-in-law away. Even as the officers were taking her, she was shouting something loudly, but I no longer cared to listen to her words. There was a reason why my in-laws were unaware of my family's business background. My father, coming from a poor background since childhood, continued to live modestly, even after becoming a company president. He never considered buying branded clothes. He always took great care of his belongings and used them for a long time. Hence, at our wedding, he wore a suit he had bought decades ago. Seeing this, my in-laws assumed that my father was not financially well off and misunderstood his restaurant chain as a small, privately owned business. As a result, they never delved deeper into my father's business. Time went by without them understanding the true circumstances of my family. Days after managing to send my mother-in-law home, Jake tried to persuade me to reconcile our differences. His persistence was incredibly exhausting. It was surprising how insistent he was, despite the fact that he was the one who proposed the divorce. He seems to have a talent for quickly forgetting inconvenient truths. I opened the door, keeping the chain lock on, and Jake, upon seeing me, began to speak with teary eyes. Lindsay, please, let's give it another try. Everything is my fault. I'm truly sorry. I still love you. Let's be together again. He then explained a sudden turn of events. Olivia had apparently approached Jake aiming to get his house, pretending to be pregnant to sway him. However, once she learned about Jake's considerable debts, she gave up and fled, and now Jake was coming to me to seek reconciliation. Huh? What are you saying? I don't know anything about that. How can you say that? After you cheated and brought up divorce, now that she's left you, you want to get back together? There's no limit to your audacity. I have no intention of getting back together with you. Don't ever come here again. I refused Jake right there and then. Surprisingly, he quietly left. However, this was not to be their last attempt. Days later, Jake's entire family unexpectedly showed up at my workplace. They were shouting, "Bring out Lindsay. Get that woman out here. We know she's here." causing chaos in the office and leading to the security guards being called. I stood there, dumbfounded by the situation. But they wouldn't have things their way any longer. I worked at the headquarters of my father's company, and that day, my father was also in the office. All of my colleagues also supported me. "Hey, what are you doing? This is my company. Don't just barge in and make a scene. I know everything you did to demean my daughter. Don't ever come near her again, and never set foot in this company again." My usually calm father shouted furiously at my ex-in-laws. Everyone, including the employees and Jake's family, must have been surprised at the anger of my father, who usually only shows his gentle and calm side. Sorry. We're really sorry." Jake's family desperately apologized. My father's stern words had immediately quieted them down. As they were being escorted out by security, my father shouted in a strong voice, "Don't you ever come here again, and never do something like this again. I won't allow it. You understand?" Hearing this, I couldn't stop myself from crying. I felt a deep sense of gratitude that my father had gotten so angry for my sake. Later, through the company's legal advisor, I decided to seek damages from Jake's family. I sought damages for the divorce due to Jake's infidelity, for his persistent attempts at reconciliation after the divorce, and for the disturbance at my workplace. The total amount was substantial, and I eventually received payment from them. I also made them sign a written agreement promising never to come before me again. Jake's family's state of affairs rapidly declined thereafter. Chased by the money owed to me and Jake's existing debts, they ended up selling their home and moving far away. In town, the story spread that Jake had committed adultery, divorced his wife, and after being abandoned by his mistress, attempted to reconcile. Facing such embarrassment, they could no longer stay in this town. While I felt a bit of sympathy for them, I also knew that everything was a consequence of their actions, so it was clearly deserved. Jake's family never appeared before me again. Finally, I was able to resume my peaceful days. However, my father had harsh words for me as well regarding what had happened. He blamed me for not recognizing before the marriage that Jake was a person who would commit adultery and accrue debts. Certainly, while Jake was at fault, my lack of insight was also partly to blame. Unable to argue with my father, I felt disappointed and disillusioned with marriage. I felt that I needed to give my heart a break. However, about a year later, I decided to marry my colleague, Matt. Matt was sincere and earnest in his work, trusted by everyone. I was initially attracted by his personality, but as we started dating, I was also drawn to his lifestyle. His life was surprisingly simple. He never indulged in branded items, used everyday things for a long time, but generously spent money and spoiled me on dates. His behavior was very similar to my father's. My father, who usually saves money, would splurge on family trips, bringing us joy. I deeply loved and respected my father. Realizing Matt's actions were similar to my father's, I felt that I could be happy with him in the future. Therefore, I decided to marry Matt. I was worried about being scolded by my father for remarrying within a year of my divorce, but his reaction was surprisingly positive, probably because he had heard of Matt's reputation at work and knew of his character. There was nothing bad said about Matt, and from my father's perspective as the company president, Matt seemed to be performing exceptionally well. "I feel confident that Matt will take good care of you, Lindsay," my father told me happily. Matt and I were happily married. Not long after our marriage, we discovered that I was with a child. The happiest person to hear this news was undoubtedly my father. I was so glad to see my father happy. Reflecting on my time with Jake, where we didn't have children even after 3 years of marriage, it seemed like a stroke of luck. Matt and I plan to take over the company in the future. We are currently learning the basics of management from my father. Although there are many challenges, we accept that they are our responsibility as successors, and we are working hard together. We believe that we will need even more effort for the sake of our upcoming child, despite all that's happened. I am now very happy. Together with my family, we intend to firmly support this company in the future. Now that my parents will be living with us, it would be best for you, an outsider, to move into a cheaper facility. My husband, who only used me while I dreamed of happiness, ended it just like that. Betrayed by my in-laws as well, I was utterly shocked. In response, I immediately started preparing and contacted all relevant parties. Where did all the furniture and appliances go? I arranged for a company to come and take them away. What? The next day, I contacted the company to take away the furniture and appliances, and the pickup was completed. My husband was confused and couldn't hide his disturbance. My name is Michelle Smith. I am 35 years old. After graduating from college, I continued to work from home. I commute only once a month. I am employed as a regular employee, but the company has been very considerate of my situation. The reason is that both of my legs are disabled. Therefore, I use a wheelchair even for moving around indoors. This condition was caused by a motorcycle accident during my college years. I was hit from behind on the highway and thrown into the air. I remember the sensation at that time. Everything was strangely in slow motion. This might be the end, I thought calmly while I was in the air. Fortunately, my life was spared, but my legs became disabled. I am still continuing rehabilitation, but it seems unlikely that I will return to my previous condition. I have lived a life using a wheelchair for many years. Perhaps I will spend the rest of my life being single. After coming to terms with the condition of my legs, the me who once longed for marriage began to feel this way. At one time, my friends planned a mixer for me. That's where I met my current husband, Ken. He is 5 years older than me. He looks younger than his actual age. In addition, I was surprised by how youthful his actions and speech were, not seeming like someone who is 40 at all. To put it nicely, he's simple and honest. Surprisingly, he didn't mind my wheelchair at all and asked various questions without any hesitation. How do you manage meals? What about housework? Can you reach the laundry? What about work? Are you okay with using the toilet and bathing by yourself? While others were hesitant, Ken had no such reservations, and that was refreshing. I was so happy because I had never met someone I could talk to so openly. While most people would not ask about my legs, Ken did not hesitate to ask various questions. Normally, it might be considered rude, but his interest was a joy for me. He was genuinely interested in me. After several dates, we started dating. With him, I can surely be happy. At that time, only Ken was in my eyes, and I felt like I would never meet anyone else who could be by my side. Then, about half a year into our relationship, I received a proposal, and I felt extremely happy at that moment. However, the situation changed drastically shortly after we got married. We started our married life together in my single-family home. This house is a bit expensive for rent, but is a comfortable dwelling suitable for wheelchair living. Probably it's thanks to the previous tenant who modified it for barrier-free access. Ken liked the spacious house. Since I spend a lot of time at home, I took on most of the housework. Sometimes, when I was not feeling well, I would ask him for help, but he would say, "I'm tired today," and wouldn't help at all. Moreover, he refused to assist with bathing. What? No, I don't want to do that. Indeed, I can manage by myself, but it takes a considerable amount of time. When I was living alone, I used to have a helper come twice a week to assist with bathing, but on the other days, I managed by myself. Although I'm used to it, I can't help thinking it would be easier if Ken would help. It always took a long time to take a bath. I was not hiring a helper anymore because Ken said it was a waste of money. While relaxing in the bath, I suddenly thought, my arms are tired. This bathroom was originally adapted for barrier-free access. It was an important factor when choosing the property. However, when Ken takes a bath first, he doesn't put away the wash bowl, and he leaves shampoo bottles directly on the floor. It takes extra time and effort to pick them up. Can't you consider that I have to bathe by myself too? I want to take a bath without thinking about anything. Ken wouldn't listen to anything I said. This house is adapted for you. I moved here for you, you know. Got a problem with that? But you said you wanted to live here too, right? Huh? When did I say something like that? This house is where I lived before. Therefore, it is adapted so that I can live comfortably even with a wheelchair. When Ken first came here, he was impressed with the size of the house and the appliances, especially because I had invested a bit in electronics and furniture. I want to live here after we get married, he had said. Now he says, these handrails are in the way. It's like a nursing home. Why would you say something like that? Maybe I should have looked for other houses as well. It was only after we started living together that I finally realized. Ken decided to marry me because I had a house, a stable income, and domestic skills. Even during the mixer, he actively asked about my housekeeping skills. Marrying me, despite my disability, earned him praise as the ideal husband and a kind husband from those around us. But that was a misunderstanding. Despite my disability, I am independent, yet he is dependent on me for everything. As evidence, he spends most days out and about. Since the beginning of our relationship, he hasn't held a stable job and continues to live a part-time lifestyle. After getting married and realizing this reality, I have been brought to tears by my own pitiful situation. Yet, I chose not to leave him. I convinced myself that the fact he married me means he must have some affection for me, though I do not feel completely loved by him. Hey, can you give me some pocket money? I just gave you some, didn't I? I've already spent that. Ken, though unemployed, started demanding money from me. So, I consulted Ken's mother. Ken doesn't seem willing to work. What should I do? He's been working hard for a long time, so he's just tired. Let him rest a bit. My mother-in-law, who had always said, consult me about anything, ended up taking her son's side when I actually did. Indeed, Ken is her only son, so maybe it can't be helped, but I was not satisfied with that answer. My parents have already passed away, and I have no other family to rely on. Therefore, I was enveloped in despair. I thought about seeking advice from friends, but when I once mentioned a minor complaint, I was told that's a luxurious problem to have. Ken's outward appearance is that good. That evening, I ended up being scolded by Ken. What's this, huh? You've been talking unnecessary things to my mom. Are you talking about the job? Yes, that. Why would you say something that worries the elderly? I can't believe it. Then, you should just work so you won't cause any worry. When I argued back, Ken left the house. Whenever things don't go his way, he runs away. And then he comes back late at night, drunk. It's me. I'm back. It's already morning. Keep it down because it bothers the neighbors. Shut up. Don't talk back to me. When he's drunk, he becomes uncontrollable. In times like this, all I can do is stay silent and endure. I might have reached my limit. That's what I started to think. But becoming lonely again is hard. I was wondering whether I should continue to endure or live alone for the rest of my life. When divorce started to seem like a realistic option, Ken suddenly made this suggestion. How about we live together with my parents? What, you mean move back to your parents' place? No, my parents will come here. Ken spoke as if living together was the natural course of action. And he had decided they would move into our house without consulting me. Indeed, my in-laws are getting older, and I understand the desire to be near them. But both are still healthy, and they have their own home, so it's unclear why they need to move here. Is it really necessary for them to live here? The house will be too small for 4 people, and I work from home, so it will cause problems. You always only think about yourself. I didn't realize you were such a cold person. I'm just saying it doesn't make sense to forcibly move here when there's a perfectly good house already available. This place is bigger, has the latest facilities, and is convenient, right? Plus, it's barrier-free. If my in-laws come here, I'll need to be considerate while working. Ken is hardly ever home, so it's not a problem for him. But my in-laws, being pensioners, will likely spend a lot of time at home. Additionally, it takes longer for me to do tasks like using the toilet or bathing compared to others, so living with restraints would be a significant mental and physical burden. Please give me some time to think. There's no time to wait. Hurry up. Ken said he couldn't wait, but without actually waiting, he brought his parents over for the weekend. It seemed that discussions about living together had been progressing in this household for some time. Hey, I've been thinking, what about you moving into a facility? Excuse me? I was shocked and couldn't believe what I heard. A facility as in for me to move into? Yeah, I think it's a good idea. It must be hard doing various things by yourself, right? In a facility, they'll take care of everything for you. Apparently, he was not just thinking about living together but also about kicking me out of the house. I'll come to check on you sometimes. I saw the reality clearly. If I don't confront this now, when will I? Honestly, what do you think of me? You're my wife, right? You're saying you'd send your wife you love to a facility? Hold on. When did I ever say I loved you? I felt my face getting hot. This man was just using me all along. I should have realized that long ago. The moment I realized it was time to put an end to everything, Ken uttered something unbelievable. Since this house will be lived in by my parents and me, you, an outsider, will be moving into a cheaper facility. What do you mean? When I looked to my in-laws for some form of rescue, they wore sarcastic smiles. Why are you laughing? Well, it's just funny. Sorry about that. They might have had their eyes on my house since even before we got married. Clearly, the situation was moving rapidly. I felt a strong need to get them out of the house. Please leave. What did you say? Please leave right now. Hey, why are you speaking to my parents like that? It seemed like I was seeing Ken's true colors. He was shouting at me with a face full of anger. If he cares so much about his parents, he should earn and build a house for them. Why try to take mine? Anger was boiling over in my head. Ken, calm down. She is just shocked by the sudden news. We just came for a preliminary look today. Yes, it's natural to check the house before moving in. It has become more livable than before, with more appliances. They came with the serious intention of taking my house. I tried to take a deep breath to calm down. As I inhaled oxygen, suddenly, a suspicion crossed my mind. How do they plan to make a living after I leave? My in-laws live on their pension, and Ken is employed on a non-regular basis. Currently, I pay for all the rent and daily expenses of this house. Who will pay the $2,000 living expenses? Do my in-laws think Ken earns enough for the rent and living expenses? Regardless of my concerns, my in-laws left the house contentedly. Ken also left with them. I'll be staying at my parents' house tonight. Wait, I want to talk. There's nothing to talk about. I, as the head of the household, have made my decision. My opinion won't change. I was left behind, stunned and bewildered, but I couldn't just sit still. Thinking I had to come up with a plan, I contacted an acquaintance who is a real estate agent. That night, Ken stayed at his parents' house and did not return. They were probably celebrating together. I quickly sorted my belongings into what I needed and what I didn't. When Ken returned home the next day and saw the organized luggage, he laughed. Oh, you've started sorting out your belongings already. Have you found a facility? Yes, that's right. My immediate response seemed to take Ken by surprise. Then, I handed Ken a signed divorce form. Here, sign this. I've already signed it, so just fill in your part quickly. Divorce papers? Why are we getting divorced? Since you're trying to kick me out of the house, there's no point in continuing this marriage, is there? Ken looked utterly taken aback. Apparently, he hadn't anticipated a divorce proposal from me. No, you can't manage without me, can you? Huh? I can't understand that reasoning. Who else is going to marry you, considering I'm your only option? If you divorce me, you'll likely be single for life. I can live on my own. But you wanted to get married, didn't you? Seeing Ken's perturbation, it became clear just how self-centered he was. He approached me thinking of me as a lonely single woman with a disability, someone vulnerable. I am independent, financially stable, and do not struggle with my lifestyle. Moreover, I can manage household tasks well since I spend a lot of time at home. For him, I was the ideal partner who could enable him to live freely without working. Without working, he would still have money coming in. Praised by others for marrying me, he felt secure thinking I had no other options and wouldn't leave him. But being presented the divorce papers immediately must have surprised him. Why? If we get divorced, you might end up single for the rest of your life. Actually, I feel much better about being single than continuing to live a married life with you. Do you really intend to spend the end of your life alone, in solitude? He asked me, almost sneering. Whether I feel lonely or not is not for you to decide. That's not something someone else should comment on. When I, who had been submissive, retaliated with a strong tone, he was clearly shaken. Ken's unease was evident, as if a pigeon had been hit by a pea shooter, caught off guard by the sudden change. I hadn't realized until now how feeble he was. Why had I been so considerate and obedient to him? It was hard for me to understand myself. The moment I decided on divorce, it felt like a heavy burden was lifted from my heart, as if I had gained a new freedom. Perhaps I had always been trapped by the concept of marriage, only able to see myself within its confines. And I realized that for the first time then. Anyway, there's no need to rush out of this house so suddenly. I said you should go to a facility because I didn't think you'd act so quickly, he said as if making excuses. Don't worry, I'll do as you wish. Now, sign the divorce papers, I responded calmly. I can't believe you'd find a new place to live so quickly. Wait, reconsider this. No need to worry. I've already settled the contract with the facility. What? Wait, isn't that too fast? He couldn't hide his panic. Watching his sudden change of attitude, I observed him with a detached view. Sometimes he scoffed. At times he was frantic, behaving erratically. As I gradually regained my composure, his presence began to feel increasingly bothersome. I've already arranged things with the facility. They're aware of my situation, so there's no need to worry. Hey, when did you make such preparations? I had my suspicions, but have you planned this ahead? Yes, actually, even before I met you. In truth, I had my eye on a specific facility in anticipation of my old age. It looked like a condo complex. When I was injured, feeling uncertain about the future, I devoured investment books while hospitalized. As a result, I decided to start investing in stocks and real estate. I used my income and inheritance from my parents to diversify my investments. The facility I had been eyeing was actually already purchased by me and had been operated as a rental property for a long time, generating rental income. I had never mentioned any of this to Ken. It was my secret source of wealth. We don't need a divorce. I get it. You can stay here. Let's live together with my parents. You really don't understand anything. As if I would ever agree to live together. He seemed completely oblivious. Even in the situation of offering a divorce, he still thought I had no other options but him. Unfortunately, I can't change what I've already decided. What are you talking about? Always pushing your own agenda. If you're going to say that, then do as you please. Don't blame me when you regret it later. Don't worry, I won't regret anything. Now, hurry up and sign. Ken fell silent for a moment, seemingly deep in thought. As time passed, I busied myself with packing. Then, I could hear Ken talking on the phone from a distance. Judging by his tone, he was likely consulting with his parents. The fact that he couldn't make his own decisions without relying on his parents filled me with contempt. Eventually, Ken returned to the room and suddenly approached me. Fine, we'll divorce. But once you sign, leave this house immediately. He signed the divorce papers reluctantly. He probably felt the loss of having me who had taken care of the household. However, maybe he thought that with his parents, he wouldn't need to worry about housework for the time being. Having acquired the house and all its furnishings and appliances, everything needed for living was already in place. He must have rationalized it that way. Well, I'm going to discuss our future life with my parents. You get ready to move out quickly. He tossed the divorce papers at me and left for his parents' house again. Understood? I'll do just that. My move was completed within a week. During that period, Ken did not show himself. A day after I finished moving, we met again when I was starting my new life in the new residence. Ken called me back to our previous home. What's this? The house is empty. Where did all the appliances go? I had them all picked up by a service. What do you mean? The day before, I had contacted a service to collect the furniture and appliances. Ken fell into panic, unable to hide his turmoil. Not just Ken, but his parents were also there. The appliances here were bought by me. I've been using most of them since before I was married. The only things that are yours are these. There were only 3 cardboard boxes left there. Only the clear storage boxes that were purchased after the marriage were left behind. Wait, we can't live like this. Even though we're divorced, there needs to be a division of assets. That's right, we can't live like this. What are you talking about? It's impossible to live here now anyway. What do you mean? The rent for this place is $2,000, you know? Ken and his parents were at a loss for words. Aside from his parents, I had clearly explained this to Ken when we got married. This house, it's not owned by you? That's right, I don't own it. This place was rented through a real estate agency run by an acquaintance, who gave me a slight discount on the rent. I had informed him that if I were to leave, the rent would naturally increase. Being a barrier-free property, there were several inquiries from people in similar situations as mine. That's why I recommended moving out as the wisest choice. Why didn't you say that sooner? What are we supposed to do now? That's not my concern. I clearly explained it to Ken. I wasn't told, we'll sue. Their reaction was as expected. From the outside, it might look as if I suddenly demanded a divorce, relinquished the dwelling, and took away the furniture and appliances. However, I was confident in my position. You're free to sue, but do you have the funds for that? Ken's expression darkened. It was clear this man didn't have the financial means to hire a lawyer. Even if he somehow managed to hire one, I had a decisive advantage. In front of Ken and his in-laws, I presented several photographs. What are these from, I wonder? The photos captured Ken indulging in gambling and nightlife. All of these were funded by me. I am prepared to fight with these. Ken, what is all this about? Everything was supposed to go smoothly. His parents were panicking abnormally. What was happening? Then Ken suddenly started to prostrate himself in apology. I'm sorry. Please cancel the divorce and let's start over. I can't do it without you. You're the one who drove me out. The divorce is already final. You're the one who said you didn't love me. So all I'm doing is leaving. Then his in-laws also started prostrating themselves beside Ken. We have nowhere to live now. This situation was completely unexpected. What do you mean? Our house is going to be seized. A shocking fact was revealed. Ken's family home was in a situation where they had to vacate in a few weeks. They were actually bankrupt. The enormous debt accumulated by the father-in-law kept snowballing, and with just their pensions, repayment was impossible. I understood then why Ken, who used to receive an allowance from his parents during his bachelor days, considered marriage as a way out of this predicament. The reason why my mother-in-law was particularly kind before the marriage now made sense. Apologies now change nothing. We are strangers. There's nothing I can or will do for you. You don't care if we end up homeless? That's your responsibility. Can't you at least give us the furniture and appliances? You're not struggling for money. Are you planning to sell them? No, haha. Their intention was clear. I firmly stated that I had no intention of giving away any furniture or appliances. Don't say things like that. Please, help us somehow. It's too late for apologies now. Solve your own problems. We're asking for help because we can't solve them. To their persistent pleas, I stated if they couldn't pay the rent, they had no choice but to vacate. The property was leased under my name, and it was easy to get them out by terminating the contract. Evicting them went smoother than expected. Even with a name change, it would be impossible for the unemployed Ken to continue living there. This was confirmed with the real estate agent. I can afford the rent. Eventually, the termination of this property lease was decided. There's no longer any business of mine there, and with the divorce already finalized, everything ended then. After managing to evict them, I locked the door and saw their astonishment. What are we supposed to do now? I'm already prepared to move into the facility. Goodbye. Don't joke. That facility, surely you'll have no freedom there and it'll be the worst. Try your best in that terrible environment. Ken couldn't resist throwing a sarcastic remark my way before finally leaving. I ignored his words and left Ken and his parents behind. However, Ken wouldn't just let it be and visited the facility I had moved into a few days later. What is this about? Ken was lost for words at the sight of the facility I had chosen. Talks of a terrible environment were greatly exaggerated. This place is top-notch. The facility I chose is a luxury one, worth about $700,000. I acquired the facility with the money I had saved over the years and the funds I had grown through investments. As a tenant just moved out, I was able to start living here. The temporary income from selling some appliances also helped, leaving me financially comfortable. The facility offers services worth its price, with doctors and helpers always on site. The layout is a spacious 3 rooms, creating a comfortable environment even for families. Hence, many couples and families also reside there. Daily assisted bathing services are provided, and there's a system in place to call for a helper whenever needed. Originally intended as a place to spend the final chapter of my life, I'm satisfied with my choice now that I'm living here. I had no idea you were so wealthy. So what if I was? It's a nuisance for you to show up here. We're strangers now, so could you please leave? At this point, Ken suddenly started behaving in a coquettish manner towards me. It was truly unpleasant. Can't you let me live here, just me? What are you saying? That's absolutely impossible. We're divorced. Accept the reality. But let's remarry. Actually, I'm living in an internet cafe now. Pitiful, isn't it? Without an address, I can't find a job. Such a self-serving man. Always putting his own convenience first. It seems he quickly abandoned his parents as well. He's utterly self-centered. Why don't you take a look in the mirror? You're looking quite miserable right now. What? Even as an adult, you're still taking money from your parents, living off your marriage like a parasite. And now you're practically a beggar without a home? Pathetic. Ken's face rapidly turned red. Aren't you embarrassed to be begging your ex-wife like this? Look, everyone's watching. Residents on the balcony were looking our way. In fact, I had asked for this in advance in case my ex-husband comes visiting. For everyone to witness his pitiful state. I had anticipated that Ken would eventually come to me, either to console me, believing I'd be in a miserable state in the facility, or to seek assistance. The community was very supportive, intentionally giving Ken sympathetic looks. Their acting was so realistic and moving, almost deserving of an applause. Bathed in the gaze of onlookers, Ken seemed to realize how dishonorable his actions were. I won't ask any more. Leaving those words behind with a pale face, he left. This should prevent him from coming again. Later, I ran into my mother-in-law who was working as a cashier at a supermarket. It appears my father-in-law was doing cleaning work, and my mother-in-law was on register duty. Upon seeing me, my mother-in-law hurriedly hid her face and avoided me. She was being scolded by a younger female employee for her behavior. I heard Ken was introduced to a job by someone he met at the internet cafe, working in a tough environment for a very low wage. As for me, I frequently host home parties, enjoying my time with people in the facility. I've made friends with other wheelchair users, and with such a community, I wish I had moved here sooner. I'm living a comfortable and happy life. After a long time, I've also been able to devote time to rehabilitation. Currently, I'm working towards being able to walk a bit on my own feet. I'm spending my days satisfied with both my work and personal life. This house is mine. You need to leave. What did you say? We live separately because I listened to your selfishness. So don't think you can complain. Really? That's a relief. What? Bradley looked at me with a puzzled expression. But soon, he would understand what I meant. My name is Mindy. I'm 34 and work as an office employee. After graduating from university, I joined my current company and have achieved significant results at work. I was appointed as a manager and now work together with my colleagues, trying to achieve greater things. The responsibilities of a leader are heavy, and things don't always go smoothly. Still, I'm able to be successful because I'm blessed with wonderful colleagues. Our workplace is highly cooperative, and everyone supports and respects me. Of course, the company's goals and individual goals don't always align. What's important is that we respect each other's opinions while ensuring that the entire team moves in the same direction. Together, we work toward common goals with united efforts. That's how I'm able to fulfill my role as a manager. Listening to this story, my life might sound like it's all about work, but my personal life is also fulfilling. I'm currently dating a man named Bradley, and we understand each other very well. We met at a group blind date, and after a few dates, we started going out. He was sincere and had a warm heart, and he understood when my busy schedule didn't align with his. My appreciation for him grew stronger day by day. A year and a half into the relationship, I found my love for him was growing. As our relationship continued to flourish, one day, he surprised me with a proposal. Mindy, you're always working so hard, and I think it's wonderful. I want to support you forever. Will you marry me? He said this as he offered me a ring. The proposal was unexpected and surprised me, but it filled me with immense happiness. And so, I decided to marry him. Getting married at May 31st seemed a little late, but I was truly glad I found such a wonderful partner. When I shared this joyful news with my mother, she was overjoyed. My father passed away 2 years ago, so he couldn't see me get married, but I was glad I got to make my mother proud. We arranged for both families to meet and successfully held the wedding afterwards. My mother shed tears when she saw me in my wedding dress. Making her happy made me happy too. After the wedding, we began living together in Bradley's old apartment. The apartment was close to the city center, convenient for commuting, and spacious enough for the two of us to live comfortably. We considered finding a new place, but for economic reasons, we decided to continue living in the existing apartment. Starting our newlywed life like this, the happiest thing was being able to spend each day with my husband. Bradley wasn't particularly skilled in housework, but he always praised my cooking and cleaning and never forgot to express his gratitude. His appreciation and compliments were a great support for me, and I hardly felt the burden of household chores. This is how we made our newlywed life enjoyable and fulfilling. However, about 2 years after our marriage, my mother started to have health issues. She had suffered from major illnesses several times in the past, and her body was under a lot of strain. At 69, she was quite old, and even small things could lead to significant injuries, so she was living carefully. Unfortunately, she fell down the stairs at home and injured her leg. The injury lingered, and recently she mentioned that she had difficulty standing for even a short period of time. When I went to check on her out of concern, she seemed to be in considerable pain. My mother is now undergoing rehabilitation, but she's alone at home, so she faces lots of inconvenience in her daily life while she recovers. Therefore, I had an important request to discuss with my husband. Hey, Bradley, if it's okay, I'd like to ask you something. Can I stay at my mother's house to help with the household chores until her leg heals? My husband was initially surprised by this suggestion, but quickly agreed. Of course, that's fine. I'm sure your mother has had a tough time living alone all this while. I'll miss your cooking for a while, but thinking back to my days living alone, I think I can handle it. Don't worry about me. Please help your mom. Bradley, thank you so much. I expressed my gratitude. I was delighted to have my husband's understanding and support, and when I told my mother about it, she initially seemed apologetic. But knowing that my husband had willingly let me go, she showed a relieved expression and said, "That's very kind. I'm sorry." I was so happy to be able to live with my mother again after a long time. During this time, I requested a work arrangement from my company and was allowed to work remotely. Because I'd always given my best at work, I had strong trust from my superiors, and setting up my remote environment went smoothly. My concentration and determination to achieve results in my work have always been highly appreciated. After getting everything prepared, I temporarily returned to my parents' house. While it was lonely living apart from my husband, since it was the path I chose, I decided to focus on taking care of my mother first. My mother also seemed excited to be living with me again, and her feelings were contagious. "I want to try baking a cake," she said. "But your leg isn't well, so don't overdo it. The doctor told you to avoid standing, remember?" I warned her. "Okay, I get it. But if possible, I'd love to make one while sitting down," my mother said. I replied, "Well, let's bake a cake together then." On the first day, my mother and I stood in the kitchen together and made a short cake with whipped cream and strawberries as topping. Afterward, we brewed a cup of aromatic coffee made at home and savored the cake while enjoying a nice conversation together. I hadn't been home for a long time, so I was more than happy to have such a relaxing time with my mother. "How are things going with you and Bradley?" my mother asked. "He is a very kind and wonderful man. We are happily married," I answered. "That's great. If you ever need to talk to him, don't hesitate to call him anytime," she said. "Thank you," I replied, and decided to call my husband from time to time. He seemed to be living fine on his own and told me there was no need for me to worry. Most of our calls would end up being simple, everyday conversations, and just hearing his voice soothed my heart. At first, we spent our time peacefully like that. But about 6 months after we started living separately, Bradley's calls became less frequent. When I called, he'd say, "Sorry, I'm really busy with work and exhausted right now," and we couldn't have much of a conversation. Worried, I sent him various messages. "Are you okay? Don't overdo it," I wrote. "Are you eating properly?" I asked, but all I got was a string of unread messages. I thought maybe he was too busy to reply and suggested, "If it's tough, should I come back for a while?" To that, he only replied, "I'm fine. Just focus on taking care of your mom for now." That response made it difficult to go back, but I was worried that he was pushing himself too hard. When you're busy, it's hard to prepare proper meals. So one day, I decided to return home during the day and cook a few days' worth of meals for him. That day, my mother had to go to the hospital, so I dropped her off before temporarily returning home. I only returned home every 2 or 3 months. But this time, about 4 months had passed since my last visit. Coming home was limited to holidays and only when my sister could take care of our mother. Since I planned to stay just briefly to cook, there wasn't a problem this time. It was when I set foot into our home after a long time. That's when I felt something was off. For some reason, the room was unusually tidy. The cleaning had been done perfectly, and the trash was taken out properly. When I opened the refrigerator, it was stocked with vegetables and meat ready to be used for cooking. I'd gone to the supermarket to buy food, but I realized it was almost unnecessary. Something was wrong. I felt uneasy and began to inspect the room. I found laundry hanging in the bathroom. When I saw that laundry, I was at a loss for words. There was women's underwear that didn't belong to me. Clearly, a woman I didn't know had been coming over, and my husband was likely having her cook and engage in intimate acts with him. I felt like I finally understood why his replies were so slow and cold. At that moment, I felt my love for him rapidly fading away. I immediately left the scene and exited the house. I thought it was best not to leave any trace that I'd been back behind. That day, I couldn't calm down at all, so I decided to stay at my parents' house. My mother noticed how drastically different I was between dropping her off and picking her up from the hospital and asked me worriedly, "Did something happen?" When she asked me that, I poured out all the anxiety I'd been feeling. She then advised, "If you're feeling uneasy, it's better to find out sooner rather than later," and suggested I hire a private investigator. I thought it would be better to uncover the truth than to keep worrying about it, even if only to clear up my confusion. Following her advice, I immediately requested an investigation, and an astonishing amount of evidence of my husband's infidelity was found. I got very upset by this fact. My husband's affair partner seemed to be a junior colleague from his workplace. It appeared that the affair had started about 6 months ago. When the investigators secretly gathered information, rumors gradually leaked from his colleagues, revealing that the two had already been suspected. After we began living separately, my husband had freely invited his affair partner into our home. There was photographic evidence of her coming and going multiple times, and it was clear that she had been primarily taking care of him. When she came to the house, she acted as if it were her own, cooking and cleaning for my husband. Learning of this affair devastated me. Knowing that my husband and his lover had been living as they pleased in our home after we started living separately, and that she had been taking care of him like a wife, broke my heart. On top of that, my husband had sent me off to my parents' house. The thought that the affair had begun around that time left me in shock. I began preparing to get back at my husband. In the midst of that, he made an unexpected move. One day, my husband appeared at our house with his mother. "Just like you left me for your mother, I will live for my mother. I'm moving in with her," he said. His mother looked pleased and asked, "Bradley suddenly proposed we live together, but Mindy, are you okay with that?" I was surprised by my husband's decision. His mother continued, "And Bradley said he's divorcing you, but what's going on?" After this remark that his mother made, my husband made even more selfish demands. "This house is mine. You two need to leave." "What did you say?" "We lived separately because I listened to your selfishness. So don't think you can complain." "Wait a minute. Why are you deciding this on your own?" Without hiding his affair, my husband continued, "She's pregnant. We need a bigger house, and your parents' place came to mind. Starting today, the three of us are going to live here. Hurry up and pack your things," he said, and he and his mother began moving their stuff in. "Really? That's a relief." "What?" Bradley looked at me with a puzzled expression. But soon, he would understand what I meant. His mother said, "So it's finally divorce, huh? We'll claim property division for all the patience my son has had with you." But I ignored that, and we carefully prepared for our departure. I quickly called my sister and, after carefully packing our belongings, drove to her apartment with my mother. My sister was extremely angry about my husband's infidelity and attempt to seize our home. But she seemed puzzled when she saw how calm my mother and I were. My mother explained to her calmly, "That house is no good. The rainy season is coming, and I'm sure things will get nasty." This was actually part of the plan we had devised. We intentionally let go of that house to ensure my husband would suffer the consequences. The house we lived in appeared beautifully renovated on the surface, but in reality, it was over 50 years old and had many structural issues. We'd experienced problems with leaks the previous year, and it was expected to worsen this year. Despite this, we quietly handed over the house to my husband without giving him this information. He was thrilled to have the house in his name, but that joy was short-lived. We divorced formally and became complete strangers in practice. After the divorce, I quickly found a barrier-free apartment and moved in with my mother. The new place was newly built, extremely clean and comfortable, providing us with a wonderful start to our new life. Then, about 2 months later, I suddenly received a call from my ex-husband. "What the heck is this?" I responded calmly, "What's wrong?" "It's the house." The leaks are so bad that all the new, cutting-edge appliances and furniture are completely soaked. All the expensive appliances I just bought are now unusable. That's really unfortunate. But what do you want to do about it? Huh? You decided to live in that house, didn't you? You chose to kick us out and live there yourself. You're the current owner, aren't you? I think you should make all the decisions regarding that house. Isn't this fraud? You didn't tell me a word about the house being so defective. What are you talking about? Think carefully before you speak. While I was away, you had an affair, and not only that, you kicked my mother, who requires care, and me out of the house. I'm recording this call, and I intend to hire a lawyer and file for property division against you, including evidence of your affair. Wait, let's just calm down. I'm very calm. I'm just stating the facts and taking appropriate action. I have nothing more to say, so I'm hanging up now. Wait a minute. After that, I hung up immediately and contacted my lawyer. Since I was already prepared to claim property division from my ex-husband, the process went smoothly. The lawyer acted promptly and sent certified documents to my ex-husband and his affair partner's workplace, demanding property division based on the affair. My ex-husband tried contacting me several times, but I avoided all his attempts. According to my lawyer, my ex-husband and his lover have been pleading financial hardship, strongly requesting a reduction in the division of assets submitted. However, I firmly rejected their demands. Later, the lover lost her job, and as her pregnancy progressed, it became physically impossible for her to find new work. As a result, the two of them were driven into severe economic hardship and ended up living a very poor life. However, all of this is a direct result of their own choices and has nothing to do with me personally. In case of any delay in payments, I've taken legal measures to garnish his wages directly. As for my ex-husband, he'll now need to struggle to repay his debts while simultaneously providing for his lover and their child. This will undoubtedly be a challenging task for him. But since it's a direct result of his own choices, there's little room for others to sympathize. Meanwhile, as I work in a position that allows for remote work, I'm living comfortably in our new home with my mother. My income remains stable just like before, and I have financial and emotional peace of mind. Moving forward, I plan to continue this peaceful life while steadily saving and building assets for the future. My name is Lucy. Currently, I live with my husband, Alex, in the same house with his parents. We bought this house 3 years after we got married, but soon after we moved in, Alex's parents suddenly showed up saying, "We can't thank you enough for buying a house for us." They brought a lot of luggage, and there was even a moving truck parked behind. As I stood there in shock, Alex nonchalantly walked past me and said, "Dad, Mom, I've been waiting. Come in." Alex's mother said to me, "Lucy, we're counting on you from now on," and proceeded into the house. However, seeing the amount of their luggage, I felt they intended to live here, so I quickly asked Alex, "What's going on?" In response to my question, Alex said, "What's so strange? We bought this house to live with my parents, so I brought them here." I was shocked. I had once mentioned the possibility of living with my parents to Alex, but I had never touched on the subject of living with his parents. Moreover, why did the situation of living with his parents suddenly arise? I was terribly confused. Living with my parents was also a plan for the future, not something immediate. And why did Alex invite his parents without discussing it with me? I asked Alex this when I saw his parents starting to bring their luggage into the room. He seemed to understand that he hadn't discussed living together with me, scratching his cheek and saying, "Well, if we're going to live together, I'd rather it be with my own parents. Otherwise, wouldn't your parents take over this place?" I was so surprised that I just replied, "Huh?" When I had talked about living with my parents, he had agreed, but perhaps he had agreed then just to avoid a confrontation with me. And by inviting his parents first, he prevented my parents from moving in. What are you really thinking? You agreed before when I said my parents would eventually live with us, but now you suddenly brought your own parents. Are they really going to live here? I've been thinking a lot too. But you didn't wait for my response and rushed for an answer, so I couldn't say no at that moment. I didn't rush you at all. I just asked for your opinion. I wanted to live with my parents. Then you should have made that clear when I brought up the topic of living together. Stop acting like a child. Living with Alex, I've realized that he has a very childlike personality. Whenever I do something, he comes over curious, asking, "What are you doing?" Maybe children are easier to deal with. If a child shows interest in household chores, you can suggest, "Want to try?" and they might engage. But Alex asserts, housework is not a man's job. I thought that dealing with a childish adult might be more troublesome than an actual child. Apparently overhearing our argument, my mother-in-law started keeping my distance, advising, "Lucy, you might feel dissatisfied over trivial matters between husband and wife, but some compromise is necessary." I sensed a demand in her words. My in-laws seem to view me merely as an appendage to their son. If they think I'm just an accessory making a fuss about not wanting to live together, her behavior makes sense. From my perspective, Alex is the accessory, but they don't seem to see it that way. My mother-in-law was eager to help with household chores, but their attitude was grating on my nerves. This situation continued, and as I pondered how to respond to their attitude, Alex's sister, Kate, visited. Kate is 5 years younger than me, already married 3 times and currently living with a new husband. When I returned home, Kate was already there. "Welcome back, Lucy. I heard about it. You stood up to my brother and tried to kick our parents out of this house," she said. I was shocked and looked sharply at Alex sitting beside me. Why would Alex tell such a lie? Is it to make me look like the enemy? Alex wilted under my gaze, averting his eyes. If he feels awkward, he shouldn't have chosen words that blame me in the first place. Then Kate, who had been observing, stood up as if to protect Alex. "Lucy, if you're going to make such a face, please leave. Just as I heard, you are a demon wife. It's bad for prenatal education to have you around." Being suddenly told to leave, I was confused about which part of the house she was referring to. For a moment, I thought she wanted me to leave Alex's room where he was enjoying conversation with his sister, but that didn't seem to be Kate's intention. She stroked her belly and said, "I'm planning to give birth in my hometown. So, Lucy, I don't want you in the house. At least until my child comes into this world." Confused, I replied, "What do you mean?" "Wow, Lucy, that face is scary. No wonder my brother avoids you. You might be close to getting divorced." Kate was teasing me with a smirk on her face. When I looked towards Alex, he was avoiding my gaze, looking down. Even if the other person is a dear sister, anyone would stop her from criticizing their wife. However, just as Kate pointed out, maybe Alex is getting tired of me. But being told such things, my interest in him also wanes. I can't forgive him for inviting his parents to live with us without my permission and for speaking ill of me to his parents and sister. His attitude seemed to belittle me. Why should I continue to treat such a person with affection? I felt my feelings for him growing cold. And since there was no room decided, "I'll be using your room. Please organize your belongings. Now, big brother, say something too. It's been hard for you because of the demon wife, right?" Alex hung his head at Kate's words but stood up, pulled up by her forceful hand. Prompted by her, he gave a strained smile and said, "My important sister is going to give birth here, so we don't need you. You can sleep on the streets or something." Reflecting on the 3 years of marriage, I took a deep breath and replied, "All right." Kate exclaimed with joy, raising both hands. "Really? I'm so happy." Alex let out a sigh of relief as I didn't respond with anger. However, in my heart, I decided to give appropriate punishment to Alex, Kate, and my in-laws. One evening, during a family dinner, I presented Alex with divorce papers. His face was a picture of surprise. "Sign the divorce papers. You want me to leave this house, right? If you don't sign, I'll stay here." "If that's the case, big brother, why don't you sign?" But in the end, I think Lucy won't file them. I often use that trick too. Get them to sign, and if you don't want to divorce, just follow along. It seemed Kate had used these papers in the past to manipulate situations to her advantage. Such a person is bound to be divorced, I thought, but she seemed oblivious. Alex, accepting Kate's suggestion, signed the divorce papers without hesitation. It bothered me that he misunderstood my intention, thinking I presented the papers just as a threat. Normally, such documents aren't presented without the intention to divorce. However, getting his signature so easily made me feel a bit lighter. Now, I could take full revenge on them. The divorce was finalized, and I promptly organized my belongings. At that time, Kate was back home, confirming her plans for childbirth. Hence, she said she didn't intend to come to the house until my belongings were properly stored and the room was cleaned. As a result, I was diligently packing up after returning from work. In the meantime, I found and signed a lease for an apartment suitable for singles and began the process of selling the house. After moving my necessary belongings to the new apartment, I visited my in-laws' house. There, I found Alex, Kate, and my in-laws, all four of them together. Knowing that my father-in-law and Alex would be off work that day, and that my mother-in-law and Kate didn't work, I decided to visit when all of them were present. My sudden visit surprised all four of them. Moreover, when I arrived, three of them, except Kate, seemed to have been enjoying alcohol since the afternoon. In their presence, Alex was saying, "Lucky that woman left. She thought if she got angry, everything would go as she wanted. She acted so arrogantly, troubling me." My mother-in-law responded, "Indeed, Lucy had a somewhat difficult personality." The reason I was angry with Alex was that he started living with his parents and even made me leave the house for his sister, all without discussing it with me. I was angry because of his unreasonable actions. However, it seems within the in-laws family, I am somehow perceived as the bad one. Listening further, remember the girl I introduced earlier? It seems he started dating her, but she's a better match than the previous sister-in-law, right? I think a more adorable woman suits my brother better. They discussed his shocking affair. If their relationship started a week ago, that was when I was already proceeding with the divorce, so I guess it won't be an issue of infidelity. But still, his actions infuriated me. I briskly opened the room door and checked the faces of the chatting in-law family. The four of them seemed not to expect my return and were surprised. I came with the real estate agent. Lucy, who is that man behind you?" Alex asked, pointing to the man behind me. Before I could say anything, Kate exclaimed, "Isn't that sister-in-law's new partner? Brother, this is infidelity. Let's make her support us financially." In the midst of everyone thinking Alex and I are still married, I've lost all patience with Kate, who, despite having introduced Alex to a new lover, is now making a fuss demanding money. Amidst this, the real estate agent handed a business card to my father-in-law and greeted him. Looking at the card, my father-in-law wondered, "Why is someone from real estate here?" The agent replied, "To appraise the value of this house." My in-laws exchanged glances and started laughing. "We plan to continue living here, so no appraisal is needed." However, the agent clearly stated, "Actually, this house is in Lucy's name. She wishes to sell it, so we are proceeding with the sale." Upon hearing this, my in-laws showed expressions of surprise, seemingly unaware of this fact. Perhaps Alex hadn't accurately conveyed this information. Alex said he would explain the details himself, so I left it alone. However, from my in-laws' attitude, it was clear that they had not received this information. They seemed to think I was just a burden and that Alex was supporting me by buying this house. So, I planned to explain the truth about the house's ownership and financial aspects to Alex and his parents if the situation didn't improve after a while. However, before I could explain, Alex's sister Kate appeared and kicked me out of the house as the owner. Therefore, I judged that dialogue with this in-law family became difficult and decided to take direct action. That action was to find a new home for myself, complete the move, and then promptly sell this house. Alex seemed to take Kate's words at face value and was complacent, thinking I wouldn't divorce. Seeing Alex's surprised face, I sighed inwardly. Since I, the owner, was kicked out of this house, it makes sense to sell it. It might be, but this residence is mine as well, and since we're married, it's also yours. Right now, my parents and sister are living here too. So what? Whether you or your family are here, it's irrelevant to me. Besides, we divorced quite some time ago. You signed the divorce papers, right? I submitted them to the city hall immediately. At my words, Alex seemed shocked and said, "What?" He seemed to think the divorce papers were just a threat. Disappointed, I sighed again. Then Kate started accusing, such an unforgivable woman. This she-devil, using my brother's money to get the house and then putting it in your name. I wonder who she thinks is the cause of this situation. I stared at Kate. Your beloved brother actually doesn't have any money. He's working, but all his income goes to repaying borrowed money. Why does my brother have debts? Isn't that because he paid your living expenses? Kate had been married 3 times, but 2 of them ended due to her infidelity. Each time she would say, "Please keep it a secret from my parents. I don't have the funds, so help me," and Alex would comply with her unreasonable requests. At first, I didn't notice, but then I discovered that the savings we were supposed to be building together had significantly decreased and confronted Alex about it. It turned out that Alex had been giving living expenses to his sister Kate without telling me. Despite this, I resolved the house payments using my own savings. I was beyond surprised and felt utter disdain for him for giving his sister such amount of money. Even if he said he would pay back the money in the future, I could no longer trust his word. I hired a lawyer. It was to recover our joint savings that he had squandered. Before I could share this fact, his parents, learning about their daughter's infidelity, exploded in anger. All her past divorces, she said they were due to personality clashes. To think Kate was unfaithful. Such a dirty child. We didn't raise our children to be adulterers. Wait, Mom, Dad, it's just Lucy talking nonsense. This isn't true. Perhaps feeling disadvantaged in this situation, even Alex, who doted on Kate so much, exclaimed, "It's all your fault. Because of all the money I gave to you to support your life, I ended up in debt, and because of you, Lucy and I had to divorce." Hearing this, I said, "Is it really all Kate's fault? It was your decision to suddenly bring your parents to my house, wasn't it? It was you who collaborated with your family to label me a wicked wife. And to think, just because your sister is your favorite, you plan to drive me out of the house, eventually leaving me to live on the streets? That's ridiculous." He tried to cling to my leg, but I kicked him away. "I'll be getting back all the money I paid on your behalf. Prepare yourself, I'm coming with my lawyer tomorrow." With that, I left the house. While we were talking, the house valuation was completed. Fortunately, it looks like the house will be sold as I hoped. The next day, when I showed up with my lawyer and explained the list of expenses he had wasted, his parents, looking at it seriously, said so much money existed, yet because of Kate's actions. They glared sternly at Kate, who was at the corner of the room. It seems his parents came to the house believing Alex's words about taking care of things from now on. But Alex's lies and Kate's adulterous actions had destabilized their retirement life, and they were furious. Alex incurred additional debt. After that, he was immediately kicked out of the house and ended up living in a simple apartment with his family. Kate, facing condemnation from her family, decided to live with her husband for a while and gave birth. However, since the child's hair color was clearly not her husband's, she was kicked out of that house as well. It was difficult for Kate to raise her child properly, and the child was placed in an institution. Kate, with nowhere to go, seemed to have no choice but to return to her condemning family. It seems she is still being asked for money by Alex, but I am free. I am enjoying my independent life and considering trying something new in the future. I am Kimberly. Recently, there has been a distance between my husband, Daniel, and me. Daniel frequently stays out late due to work or drinking parties, usually returning home after 10 p.m. my daughter Julia is in high school, and I have grown accustomed to life without Daniel around. Occasionally, he comes home early, around 8 p.m., usually smelling strongly of alcohol, indicating an early end to his drinking sessions. When Julia grimaced at the smell, Daniel looked at her irritably and says, "What?" and then inappropriately yelled, "The breadwinner is home, and you make that face." Unable to bear it, I intervened, saying, "Stop yelling," which directed Daniel's anger towards me. He glared at me and said, "It's because of your lack of discipline that our daughter has become so insolent. Teach her to respect her father at least," and stormed off to the bath. After he left, Julia snorted and said, "I don't respect him because he's not respectable," and sticked her tongue out towards the bathroom. I let out a deep sigh. Until Julia finished elementary school, Daniel watched over her with affection. However, it seems that at some point, Julia became a nuisance to Daniel. Even during her elementary years, while showing affection, he did not actually take care of her, leaving all housework and childcare to me. "Mom, you should just divorce him. If you do, he won't bother me anymore and you won't have to hear his nonsense," said Julia, my own daughter. I too wish to leave him, but I feel that I should wait until Julia graduates from high school. However, sensing my thoughts, Julia clearly stated, "Don't use me as a reason not to divorce. I don't want to think of him as my father, and I don't want to see you enduring for my sake." Realizing that avoiding divorce because of Julia is the same as telling her, "I can't divorce because of you," I immediately reflected on my thoughts. Then, I started researching divorce on the internet. This led me to also suspect Daniel of infidelity. When I came across signs that a husband might be cheating, most of them seemed to apply to Daniel. Daniel's return home has clearly become later than before. His interest in Julia and me has waned, and he always keeps his smartphone close. Witnessing these changes, doubts began to grow in my mind that Daniel might be more interested in someone else than in our family. This suspicion became a focus before considering divorce, concentrating on his possible infidelity. Fortunately, I have savings from before we were married, which allowed me to afford a detective agency to investigate Daniel's actions. I have not shared my suspicions with Julia, as I was not sure if Daniel was indeed having an affair. If it turned out he was not, it wouldn't necessarily worry her. However, just a month after deciding to have Daniel's actions investigated, and on the eve of receiving the final report from the detective, Daniel came home late from another drinking party. Unexpectedly, Julia said to me, "Mom, I think Dad is having an affair." I was surprised that Daniel's actions had become suspicious enough for Julia to notice, despite already having a scheduled meeting with the detective and being on the verge of confirming my suspicions. This situation signified a potential serious rift in our family bonds, a grave situation for me. Why do you think so? When I wondered how Julia came to know about her father's affair, she answered nervously, choosing her words carefully. "Well, it was last Saturday. I was at the shopping mall with a friend. That's when I saw Dad with another woman." Indeed, Julia had gone out that Saturday, and Daniel had left the house saying some work came up while Julia was out. But his work turned out to be time spent at the shopping center. "Was it just the two of them?" I asked, to which Julia nodded her head. "I saw them coming out of the movie theater. They were holding hands, eating ice cream together afterward. They definitely looked like a couple." "I see. Leave the rest to me," I said, trying to calm Julia down. My own daughter had witnessed her father's infidelity firsthand. And sadly, the misfortune continued thereafter. After hearing the detailed report on Daniel's infidelity from the investigator the next day, I returned home to find Julia in tears. Unexpectedly, Daniel, who usually doesn't come home until around 10 p.m., was already at home. Upon seeing me, he immediately exclaimed, "I intend to divorce you. It's because you can't properly raise our daughter and are having an affair with another man. It's only natural for me to leave you, right?" I couldn't grasp the meaning of his words immediately. However, seeing Julia crying after receiving harsh words from him, I quickly went to her and confronted Daniel. What infidelity are you talking about? What do you want to accomplish by making our daughter cry? Her beloved mother has been dating men other than her husband during the day, so I told her that it's morally wrong. When she retorted that I was the one who's unacceptable as a person, I scolded her and fulfilled my duty as a father, he said. Julia's cheeks were red. I couldn't stay in that place any longer. Feeling this, I hugged Julia tightly while Daniel looked on smugly. You have 3 days to leave this house. Once the deadline passes, I will use whatever means necessary to drive you out of this house. Be prepared for that, he declared forcefully. His voice was full of confidence, knowing well that we couldn't physically oppose him. He swung his arms with more vigor, laughed unpleasantly, and left the house. Left behind, Julia, with tears in her eyes, suggested, "We have to tell Grandma and Grandpa right away." She was referring to Daniel's parents, my in-laws. I have a relatively good relationship with them, and they have always adored Julia deeply since she was born. It's easy to imagine how furious they would be if they learned that Julia had been harmed by Daniel. Julia intuitively understood this fact and decided that we should act immediately. So, I quickly contacted my in-laws, asking them to come to our house as soon as possible without Daniel knowing. They promised to rush over after hearing about our urgent situation. When they arrived and saw Julia's tear-streaked, reddened cheeks, they were shocked. Such a thing. Who did this to Julia? They exclaimed. When my mother-in-law asked, Julia, holding back tears, answered, Dad did. He said he saw Mom meeting with another man during the day, and called Mom a bad woman for having an affair. When I denied it, such a thing. My in-laws were astonished and started to take care of Julia alongside me, eager to hear the full story from me. I honestly told them that I suspected Daniel might be having an affair and had hired a detective agency to investigate. The man I met that afternoon was the investigator giving me the report on the infidelity. And Daniel. My father-in-law continued. Actually, it seems Daniel is currently involved with 3 women. One of them is a coworker whom he meets on Mondays and Wednesdays. Another is a college student whom he meets on Tuesdays, Fridays, and Sundays. The last woman is a married childhood friend whom he meets on Thursdays and Saturdays, I revealed. Hearing this, my in-laws were dumbstruck, gripping their heads in disbelief. While they considered the possibility of Daniel cheating, they never imagined he would be involved with 3 women simultaneously. Julia said, I saw Dad on Saturday, arm in arm with a woman I didn't recognize. So, I knew Dad was involved with someone else. Neither Julia nor I could have imagined that Daniel was cheating with 3 women. When I received the report, I was so shocked that I lost my words. I received the report at a cafe, and it seems Daniel himself or someone he knows witnessed this and misunderstood it as me having an affair. Yet, for him to suspect his wife of infidelity, react violently, and lash out at an innocent daughter. I intend to divorce Daniel. Of course, I will take custody of Julia. I cannot leave her with someone who hurts her. That's... My in-laws' expression stiffened for a moment at the thought of not being able to see their granddaughter freely if the divorce went through and I took custody. However, they quickly showed understanding. So, Julia would be happier with her mother than her father. She's in high school and old enough to choose which parent she wants to live with. Let her do as she wishes, they kindly said. Perhaps they realized that their son was incapable of raising Julia properly. At that point, I shared a certain fact with my in-laws. After telling my in-laws that Daniel had ordered Julia and me to leave the house, they exchanged looks and sighed deeply. We are truly sorry. We are ashamed of our son, they said, bowing their heads in apology. No, it's not your fault. It's just that he has gone mad because of his affairs. It has nothing to do with you. I comforted them, shaking my head. I asked them to keep an eye on the situation from a distance and to refrain from contacting Daniel directly, as I intended to resolve the issue with him myself. They encouraged me, saying, "Please consult us anytime. We are here to support you." Subsequently, with the help of movers, my daughter and I moved out swiftly. Since my parents' home is far away and Julia has her high school, we decided to rent a short-stay apartment near her school. Considering the potential danger of being near such a father, we planned to move further away when the summer vacation started in a month. Fortunately, my company implements a full remote work policy, and we had moved to this area at Daniel's strong request when we got married. I then planned to move to an area closer to my company. Daniel has no interest in my job and does not even know what I do. While we were preparing to move, I unexpectedly found a divorce paper in the mailbox written in Daniel's name. It was undoubtedly filled out by Daniel, who, wanting to avoid meeting us but having forgotten to hand over the divorce paper, had hastily filled it out and dropped it in there. Without wasting a moment, I filled in my name and other necessary details and promptly submitted the divorce paper to the city hall. Before the 3-day deadline Daniel gave us passed, Julia and I left that house. Now that the divorce has been officially finalized, there was no longer any reason for me to seek a reunion with Daniel. Above all, I had a strong desire to protect Julia from Daniel's influence. A month after leaving the house, as Julia entered her summer vacation and began preparing to transfer to a new school, and we finished moving to a different place, Daniel unexpectedly called. "How do you feel living like homeless people? If you are willing to apologize, you can come back." "Honestly, I'm getting bored of living in a big house alone," he said. Despite having been given divorce papers, why did he think I would return? Did he still think we weren't divorced yet? "There's no need for us to return to that house. Don't worry. It has already been sold," I calmly replied. "What?" He was surprised. I chuckled lightly. "Why did you think you could drive us out of that house?" "It was my property, inherited from my father," I said. Aha! Daniel had overlooked such an important fact, perhaps distracted by his affairs with 3 women he was seeing on a rotating schedule. Of course, I knew the house was in my name, but I complied with Daniel's demand and left, considering Julia's future and deciding it was better to move to a place unknown to Daniel. "Your parents were surprised, too. They couldn't believe you were so uninformed," I added. "What? You went to see my parents after I kicked you out?" He panicked. "I didn't ask for their help. I just told them we were divorcing. Now, Julia and I live in a place you don't know," I calmly informed him. "What? You're in a place I don't know? Whatever. Come back. If the house is yours, I guess I have no choice but to accept you," he said arrogantly, as if my ownership changed the situation. I couldn't help but smile at his belief that his attitude could change the situation. "What are you talking about? There's no reason for us to return. I told you the house has been sold, right? It's neither mine nor yours anymore," I countered. What am I supposed to do then?" He panicked. "You have until the end of this month to leave." "That's unfair," he protested. "Considering you gave us 3 days, I think I'm being far more generous," I calmly said in front of him. He grumbled, frustrated at having his own words used against him. Compared to the 3-day notice, a month is far more lenient, I believe. "Also, I intend to claim compensation from you." "What?" He was surprised. "I have already received compensation from your affair partners, including your company colleague, the college student, and your childhood friend. So next, I will be claiming compensation for the affair from you," I explained to Daniel. "Impossible. The reason they all broke up with me and blocked me was your doing." He was shocked. It seems his attempt to contact me and propose that I could return if I apologized was because he could no longer reach his affair partners. His self-centered nature was evident from his demanding tone for me to return while relying on me. "You'll hear from my lawyer," I said. "Wait a minute. Then, I will demand compensation from you," he claimed. "Excuse me," I reacted, "because there's evidence of you having an affair. One of my partners claimed to have taken photos of you," he insisted. That reminded me of a misunderstanding. However, that was a complete misunderstanding. The person I was meeting at that time was an investigator from the detective agency giving a report on your affairs. The investigator can provide evidence that I was not having an affair, I clarified. What? An investigator from a detective agency? He was clearly flustered. That's unfair, he protested. He then realized his trump card against me was worthless and that he was no match for me. Yet, he declared he would not yield to my demands. I will never pay. Neither compensation nor child support for Julia. He defied. However, such claims had no impact on me. Even if you refuse to pay, it's not a problem. I can directly contact your employer and request a deduction from your salary, I calmly replied. To my employer. He was astonished. As one of the people you had an affair with as a coworker, it's only natural to report to your workplace. Moreover, after an investigation with a lawyer, we found out you have a substantial severance package. If we can access that, paying child support won't be a problem. The compensation might be high since there were 3 affair partners, but that's something you'll have to manage, I continued. No way, will nothing be left for me? He despaired. Indeed, nothing would be left for him. His actions had driven away his wife and daughter, alienated 3 affair partners, made his own parents aware he had abandoned his family, lost his home, and exposed his infidelity at work. His workplace won't have a favorable view of someone who commits adultery within its premises. He used to talk as if his promotion was guaranteed, but what awaits him now is the opposite of advancement. He imagined us living as homeless people, but it seems he's the one on that path. Kimberly, I was wrong. Let's start over, he pleaded, to which I responded, if you have something to say, it'll have to go through my lawyer from now on. I'm cutting off contact. Then, I blocked him completely. Julia had already blocked him, too. When he sought his parents' help after being kicked out, his parents, unable to forgive him for hurting their beloved granddaughter, told him, "You can't enter this house ever again." At work, his infidelity was exposed, and the popular colleague he once dated resigned because of the scandal, leaving him to face cold stares from other colleagues. Unable to resign because he needs to pay compensation, he now lives a simple life, commuting between a modest apartment near his workplace and his job. Since moving to our new home, my daughter and I live peacefully without someone coming home smelling of alcohol or shouting loudly. Julia has made friends at her new school and expressed her happiness. Moving was the best decision. I'm happy with just the 2 of us. This proves that our decision was the right one, and I am committed to raising Julia to be a well-rounded individual. Is it impossible to increase the living expenses? It's impossible to get by with just $3 a month. Answering a call from my son, a university student who's living alone. I heard something unexpected. What? $3 a month? My voice grew louder in surprise. What on earth was going on? In reality, I had been sending $1,000 to my son's bank account every month. Then, my son continued with even more shocking words. I didn't want to tell you since you were fired, Mom, but living on a monthly allowance of $3 is difficult. Fired. I am a nurse and had just finished a night shift. There was no truth to being fired. To understand the situation, I hurried to my son's apartment. When I rang the doorbell, my son came to greet me. He was thinner than when he was at home, and his complexion was poor. He was clearly living frugally, not even using the heater in this cold weather. I'm using only a blanket to save on electricity. I've been working hard at my part-time job, but with university studies, I'm busy every day. I felt at my limit, so I called you, Mom. When I checked his bank account statement, it was true that only $3 had been deposited each month. I'm sorry for not noticing earlier, but I was actually sending $1,000 a month. How did this situation happen? For now, I'll withdraw some cash from a nearby ATM. I quickly went to an ATM, withdrew money, and handed it to my son. Is it okay to give me so much? Thank you, Mom. I always pretended to be fine in our calls to avoid worrying you. But I'm glad I could tell you the truth today. My heart ached for my son's efforts. Such a situation was unimaginable. Could it be? With these doubts, I told my son, until the cause becomes clear, I'll give you cash directly starting next month. After I changed the method of sending allowances to direct handover to my son, my husband became furiously angry and confronted me. Hey, isn't it the day to send money to our son? What are you doing, slacking off? My name is Rachel. After graduating from nursing school, I pursued my dream job as a nurse and have been living busy days. Romance was something I was uninvolved in, and I never had a serious boyfriend, but I didn't mind much myself. I thought casually that someday I would meet someone wonderful and build a happy relationship. Nevertheless, it seemed my parents were worried about me. Rachel, Dad's friend's son would be perfect for you. Don't you want to meet him? I was surprised by such a sudden suggestion. What? Why all of a sudden? Is it like a matchmaking meeting? No. It's nothing as formal as a matchmaking meeting. Just a dinner with the four of us. Following my father's advice, I eventually decided to attend the dinner. Nice to meet you. I'm Matt. Matt, my father's friend's son, was 3 years older than me and worked as a civil servant. He had a serious impression, but his smile was very gentle and had a heartwarming aura. Attracted to his personality, I quickly developed a liking for Matt. It seemed Matt also had a good impression of me, and after that, we occasionally had dinner together, eventually leading to a relationship. After dating for 2 years, we happily got married. With this joy, we decided to buy a new house together. For me, who had been away from romance for a long time, meeting Matt felt like fate. My father, too, was surprised and overjoyed by the deepening of our relationship, even shedding tears at our wedding. His tears of joy made our happiness even more special. Our marriage brought many blessings from friends and relatives, filling the start of our new life with warm messages of celebration. Not long after beginning our happy married life, I discovered I was pregnant, bringing even more joy to our family. I decided to take maternity leave and parental leave. In our family, a healthy baby boy was born, and we named him Nick. Nick grew up energetically, and every time we witnessed his growth, our happiness only increased. Matt was a wonderful father. Even on days when he came home exhausted, he always actively participated in housework and childcare. I deeply appreciated and felt love for his efforts. Matt, I truly appreciate your help with the household chores. What are you talking about? This is nothing. We are a couple, after all. Matt always replied with a kind smile. Every time I saw his warm smile, I felt my love for him deeply. When Nick turned 1 year old, I returned to my job as a nurse, taking a new step in balancing work and family. We took turns dropping off and picking up Nick from daycare, working together and spending our days cooperatively. Time passed and Nick became a senior in high school. I turned 47 and Matt reached the milestone of 50. Nick, I've prepared sandwiches for a late-night snack. Have some whenever you want, I said, bringing the snack to his room as usual. Thanks, Mom. Sandwiches, that's great. Your snacks give me the energy to study late into the night, Nick said, pausing his studies to smile and express his gratitude. He's always been such an honest and good boy, and I am deeply grateful for a son like him. He was preparing for university entrance exams, aiming for a college outside our state. If he passed, he would start living alone from spring, leaving our home. It's sad, but it's the path Nick chose. We decided to support him with all our might. And finally, the day of the exam arrived. I'm off, Dad, Mom. Nick cheerfully greeted at the entrance, his face slightly tense as he stepped outside. Do your best, Nick. I'm sure you'll be fine. I encouraged him. Keep calm and tackle the questions. You can do it. Matt also cheered him on. Hearing our words, Nick nodded firmly and headed for the examination venue. Ultimately, Nick successfully passed his preferred university. Congratulations, Nick. It's sad to see you leave home, but I'm so happy you passed. I congratulated him. Well done, Nick. You are our pride. Matt also expressed his joy. We celebrated his university acceptance with a lavish feast, sharing in Nick's happiness. Thank you, Mom, Dad. I couldn't have come this far without the two of you. I'll give it my all at university, too. Nick expressed his gratitude. Thus, Nick was set to start living alone in a different state from autumn. To support Nick's tuition and living expenses, I started doing more night shifts to earn the extra allowance. I was managing the household finances and had decided to send Nick $1,000 every month. Although I felt guilty for frequently leaving the house empty due to my night shifts, Matt always supported and encouraged me. Rachel, I really appreciate you working so hard. The $1,000 for Nick. I know it's tough, so it's a big help. Matt expressed his gratitude. Thank you for always being there for me. I can keep going because you're with me, I replied. Thanks to Matt actively taking care of cooking and household chores, I could concentrate on my work. September came, and Nick moved into the apartment we had chosen together, and the remittances began. I transferred $1,000 to Nick's bank account every month. And before we knew it, several months had passed. Did you transfer the $1,000 to Nick this month? You didn't forget, did you? Of course, I transferred it properly. I wouldn't forget, I replied, and Matt showed a relieved smile. But then he furrowed his brows and said worriedly, I wonder if Nick is doing well living alone. I hope he's keeping up with his classes. I just hope he doesn't get involved with the wrong friends. There's no need to worry. Nick said he's enjoying university life on Messenger. Matt, you worry too much. I often smiled at Matt's concern for Nick. I also kept in frequent contact with Nick, ensuring he was doing well and feeling reassured. Time passed, and the season gradually changed to winter. The air outside was cold and breaths turned into white mist. One night, after finishing a night shift, I returned home. Dragging my tired body, I headed towards the bedroom. As I started to change clothes, something caught my eye. There was an unfamiliar lip balm lying there. Is this Matt's? I've never seen this before, I thought, picking up the lip balm from the floor. Matt usually showed little interest in skincare products, particularly not lip balm. Maybe he bought it on a whim because of the harsh winter dryness. However, the packaging of the lip balm was unlike typical men's products, with a sophisticated design more appealing to women. The lid was adorned with glitter, and the product name was written in pink letters, standing out prominently. Intrigued by this odd discovery, I slipped the lip balm into my pocket. That night, when Matt returned from work, I decided to ask him about it. Matt, is this your lip balm? I asked, and for a moment, Matt looked surprised, then quickly smiled and took the lip balm from me. Haha, yes, that's mine. I've been looking for it. Thanks for finding it, Rachel. Where did you find it? It was on the bedroom floor, I replied. Matt seemed a bit flustered. What's wrong? Is there something odd? I asked, and Matt replied somewhat sheepishly, well, you know, it's uncommon for a guy to use lip balm, so it's a bit embarrassing. He said, scratching his head. It's not embarrassing at all. Many men take care of their lips these days, but that lip balm looks a bit too feminine. Maybe choose something simpler next time? I suggested, and Matt nodded. Yeah, I'll pick a more normal one next time. I actually chose it in a hurry and later realized it might be a bit girly. Anyway, let's watch a movie tonight. That movie you wanted to see has started streaming. He changed the subject. I was a bit puzzled by Matt's behavior in deflecting the conversation, but soon got engrossed in the movie and forgot about it. About a month later, I received an unexpected call from Nick while on my way home from a night shift. Nick, it's been a while. What's up? I greeted him cheerfully. From the other end of the phone, Nick's voice sounded weak. Mom, I'm sorry. I've been busy lately and couldn't always answer the phone. Indeed, I had noticed that Nick hadn't been answering my calls more frequently of late. I had been worried, but since they were communicating via Messenger, I thought there were no major problems. Don't worry about it. It's okay. but you sound a bit down. Is something wrong? I asked and was surprised by Nick's response. Mom, can you increase the amount of the allowance? Living on $3 a month is really tough. What? $3 a month? My voice rose in astonishment. I couldn't understand why the allowance would be only $3 a month. I was certain I had been sending Nick $1,000 every month. I didn't want to tell you since you lost your job, Mom, but it's really hard with only $3 a month. Nick continued, Lost my job? What are you talking about? I was confused and couldn't understand what he was saying. I had just finished a night shift and certainly wasn't fired. As I struggled to comprehend the situation, Nick's troubled voice continued. Wait, Mom, I heard you were fired. So, you said you'd send $1,000 a month at first, but now it's only $3, right? What are you talking about? Anyway, I'm coming over to your place right now. Okay, I'll be waiting. After hanging up, I tried to head to the station quickly. My legs wouldn't move properly in my agitation. I was surprised by this unexpected development and my heart was pounding. Trying to calm down, I took deep breaths. I slapped my cheeks with my hands to focus and quicken my pace to the station. After changing trains, I arrived at the station near Nick's apartment. I contacted Nick on my phone, telling him I would be there soon. When I reached Nick's apartment and rang the doorbell, the door opened immediately. Welcome, Mom. Nick looked shockingly thin and pale, as if he might collapse at any moment. Nick, are you okay? I asked, surprised and worried. Seeing Nick's condition, my heart was filled with pain and sadness. When I entered Nick's apartment, it was chillingly cold inside and the heater was completely off. Aren't you using the heater? It's so cold, you'll get sick. Let's turn it on right now. I suggested, worried. No, I can't. The electricity bill is too high. I'm just managing with this blanket. Nick replied, his voice trembling, his thin body shivering. Nick, I've been transferring $1,000 every month to your account since September. There's no truth to me quitting my job, I explained slowly. Really? But only $3 is being deposited into my account every month. I've been working part-time, but with university studies, it's been really busy. I was at my limit, Nick answered earnestly. I believed Nick wasn't the kind of child to lie. His emaciated appearance and the fact that he was living without heating in this cold weather made it clear that his words were true. I understand, Nick. I'm not doubting you. But to find out the cause of this situation, could you show me your bank book? I asked quietly. Okay, just give me a moment. Nick went to look for his bank book. Nick carefully took out his bank book from a shelf in his neatly arranged room and showed it to me. As I looked at the bank book, it was indeed as Nick had said. Only $3 was being deposited each month. Nick, I'm sorry, but truly, I have been sending $1,000 every month. What could be going on here? First, I'll withdraw some cash from a nearby ATM. Saying this, I went to the ATM immediately, withdrew the cash, and returned to Nick. Nick, take this for now. Until we find out the reason, I'll give you the money directly starting next month. Can I really accept this much? Thank you, Mom. I always pretended to be fine to avoid worrying you, but I'm glad I could tell you the truth today. Nick smiled weakly but happily. Seeing his thin frame, I felt a tightness in my chest. I couldn't comprehend how such a situation had arisen. But now, Nick's health was my top priority. First, I needed to take proper care of him. Nick, I'm glad you contacted me. From now on, don't endure the cold, use the heater properly. I'm going to do some shopping now. I'll make lots of your favorite hamburgers and curry. Really? Nick's eyes sparkled with life. After that, I went to the nearby supermarket, bought plenty of ingredients, and returned to Nick's apartment to cook elaborate dishes. Nick joyfully ate, saying how delicious it was repeatedly. I made plenty of food that could be frozen, so he wouldn't have to worry about meals for a while. Then, I'll bring the allowance money directly next month as well. Saying this, I left Nick's apartment. A month later, on the weekend, When Matt returned from work, he confronted me with an angry expression as soon as he entered the house. "Today's the day to send money to Nick, right? You haven't been slacking off, have you?" "It's fine. I went and gave it to Nick directly today." "Is there a problem?" I answered him, and Matt seemed puzzled. He said, "If that's the case, all right then," and quickly headed to the bedroom. When he came back to the living room, then dressed in his casual home clothes, I quickly asked him a question, feeling suspicious. "Why did you think I was slacking off with the allowance? Is there a reason?" Matt, a bit bewildered, replied, That today is payday, and usually it's the day we send money to Nick, but you didn't mention anything about it, so I got a bit worried. But let's leave this topic now." He clearly tried to change the subject while showing signs of irritation. Matt's behavior was unusual and noticeably strange. "I have another question," I said calmly. "Why do you ask so many questions?" Matt responded, appearing annoyed. "Do you remember? The lip balm we found in the bedroom before. You said you bought it yourself, but is it actually from your mistress?" "No, that's not true at all." Matt immediately denied loudly. He continued, looking more upset. "That lip balm was indeed mine. I bought it myself. I wish you wouldn't keep asking the same question. You're acting strange today. You're the one who's acting strange. You're usually calm and don't react so intensely," I pointed out. Matt, raising his voice even more, argued back. "I'm not strange. I'm just as usual. Do you really think so?" "Well, I expected this might happen. That's why I invited some special guests in advance. People you know very well." Saying this, I slowly opened the door to the guest room. "Sorry for keeping you waiting so long. Please, come in." Responding to my call, 3 individuals appeared before Matt. "What, Erica? And even Dad and Mom are here." Matt was so astonished that he was lost for words. The woman named Erica, clearly in a bad mood, muttered, "This couldn't get any worse," and sat down heavily on a dining chair. Meanwhile, my in-laws looked at Matt with a stern gaze, and his face gradually turned pale. 3 weeks earlier, I had consulted my father-in-law, a former bank employee, about why only $3 was being transferred to Nick. My father-in-law quickly investigated the issue and discovered that there were 2 bank accounts under Nick's name. Matt had opened one of those accounts. Despite my offer to set it up myself, Matt insisted, "Leave it to me, I'll handle it." And eventually, he was the one who opened the account. My father-in-law revealed through conversations with bank staff that Matt had opened 2 bank accounts using Nick's name, claiming it was for living and tuition expenses. The cash card and bank book for the account where I had been depositing $1,000 monthly were actually under Matt's control. "I'll manage one of the accounts, so leave the card and book to me," he had insisted, forcibly taking them from Nick. Then, Matt withdrew the $1,000 deposited by me every month from that account for his own use. Moreover, to make it seem like he was still sending money to Nick, he deposited a mere $3 into the other account that Nick had the bank book for. After learning this shocking truth, I was trembling with anger and deeply suspicious about how Matt was using the large monthly sum. I then remembered the charmingly designed lip balm I had found in the bedroom before. Driven by this intuition, I decided to have a detective agency investigate Matt's activities. The investigation revealed that Matt was having an affair with a woman named Erica, his subordinate. While I was out on night shifts, Matt had been secretly inviting Erica to our home. Having gathered enough evidence, I decided to confront Matt with the truth by inviting my in-laws and Erica, Matt's mistress. "Matt, you must be aware, but your misconduct has already been exposed," I told him sternly, and Matt's face turned ashen, his lips trembling slightly. "All the $1,000 sent to Nick each month. You were using it all for Erica, weren't you? How terrible. According to the detective agency's report, you bought Erica an expensive brand necklace. What were you thinking?" Matt vehemently protested in response. "No, I did buy jewelry, but that's not all. I didn't use all $1,000 just for gifts. Erica's mother was seriously ill and hospitalized for a long time. I was providing financial support for her medical expenses. I was just trying to help someone. Matt claimed. Is that true, Erica? About your mother being sick? Please be aware that lying won't help, as it will eventually be revealed. Can you tell us the truth? When I asked Erica, she was silent for a moment and then reacted with a bit of anger. That's a lie. All of it. My mom is healthy and working on the farm in the countryside every day. The story about her being sick is all made up. Hearing this, Matt shouted, trembling with anger. What? You lied to me? I can't believe it. Do you know how much money I've been giving you? Erica, without any sign of remorse, laughed mockingly. Ha, you're a fool for being deceived. I thought I had found a good cash cow, but it's over now. I thought I could milk you for longer, but I miscalculated. Such a shame. A cash cow. You said you loved me. Was that all a lie, too? Your feelings for me weren't real. You do love me, don't you? Matt was confused, angry, and seemed to forget that I and his parents were present. It was extremely unpleasant for me to see my husband cling to a younger woman in such a pathetic manner. It was embarrassing, pitiful, and above all, deeply unsettling. Suppressing my disgust, I confronted the situation. Just think about it. How could a young and attractive woman like me really love a middle-aged man like you, Matt? It's laughable. Do you even realize your own worth? Look in the mirror and face reality. Erica burst into mocking laughter. Although Erica's words might be true, her brazen attitude infuriated me. To think such a thing. In response to a shocked Matt, I presented him with 3 documents. The first was the bank transaction history, the second, conclusive evidence photos of the affair, and the third, a divorce form. A divorce form. Wait, are we really getting divorced? Matt was shocked, ignoring the first 2 documents and focusing on the divorce form. Of course. How can I continue married life with a man who wastes his son's allowance? But I didn't intend to get divorced. This situation is a separate issue. Matt mumbled some excuse. I exploded in anger at Matt's ridiculous remarks. I can't believe this. You have an affair and yet you think we wouldn't get divorced? And how you treated Nick is unforgivable. What kind of parent are you? Did you really think he could live on $3 a month? Nick has been working hard at part-time jobs, scrimping and saving, becoming skin and bones. He couldn't even properly use the heater. You're terrible. Sign the divorce form now. I do feel sorry for Nick. When I heard Erica's mother was sick, and with all her demands, I desperately needed money. Matt weakly tried to justify himself. That's when my father-in-law delivered a powerful blow to Matt. With a short cry of "ah," Matt collapsed, and his father's angry voice boomed. You stupid son. Sign the divorce form, as Rachel says, right now. Dazed, Matt faced me, and I firmly stated, of course, I'll be demanding compensation. I'll add up all the money you wasted, too. Compensation. You can't be serious. Matt was shocked and exclaimed. And Erica, I will also demand payment of compensation from you, so be prepared. I said that to Erica, and her face turned pale, beginning to panic. Wait a minute. Why should I pay compensation? I can't pay. Why should you pay? Because you were involved in an affair with a married person. I have the right to demand compensation from you, and I will make sure you pay it. When I responded calmly, Erica, glaring at Matt, said, Matt, you have to pay for me too. I don't have any money. I spend all my salary on cosmetics, clothes, and bags. I have no savings. Nonsense. I don't have any money either. You took everything. If you hadn't deceived me, none of this would have happened. You're just a devil, Matt yelled. As the two argued, Matt suddenly turned to me, pleading, Rachel, please, spare me the compensation. I'll agree to the divorce, just drop the compensation claim, please. I really have nothing. Look, we've supported each other until now. Tears streaming down his face, Matt appealed, but I felt only revulsion. My love for Matt had vanished the moment I learned he had been spending Nick's allowance on his affair. If you resist any further, I'll double the compensation. Sign the divorce form now. I'll properly claim the compensation later, I stated resolutely, and Matt, realizing my determination, signed the divorce form. I've signed it. Are you happy now? Matt said in a weak voice, handing over the divorce form. Yes, thank you. Now, please leave immediately. What? Do I have to leave? Matt was surprised. Of course, we're getting divorced. We can't live together anymore. You need to take responsibility. Erica, please leave quickly too. After I sternly expelled Matt and Erica from the house, my in-laws repeatedly apologized for their sins misdeeds. But they were not at fault. I was full of gratitude for my father-in-law, whose efforts uncovered Matt's wrongdoings. After expressing my sincere thanks to my in-laws, I headed to the municipal office and submitted the divorce papers, thereby ending my marriage to Matt. Subsequently, through a lawyer, I made compensation claims against Matt and Erica. Despite their civil servant status, they had been openly dating and there had been rumors of their affair for some time. As a result of the compensation claim, they both became mentally strained, increasing mistakes at work, leading to demotion to less significant positions, and unable to bear the cold treatment from colleagues. Erica chose to resign. Matt, disowned by his parents, is now leading a tough life in a modest apartment, paying compensation to me. Erica, though her parents paid the compensation, had to return to her parents' rural home in exchange. She ended up helping with farm work at home, living a life without freedom under the strict supervision of her parents. I received apologies from Erica's parents over the phone and was informed in detail about Erica's current situation. They said they are keeping a strict watch on her to prevent her from causing any more trouble. For myself, I decided to sell my home and move to a place closer to my son Nick's apartment. Nick and I often meet and keep each other updated about our lives. I informed Nick about the divorce with Matt over the phone on the same day. Nick couldn't believe that Matt had lied about me losing my job and only being able to send $3 a month. When I told him the truth, he was deeply shocked. Could it be a mistake? Dad, who was always so kind, doing something like that? Nick said, his voice trembling. I also felt pained by his reaction. Indeed, Matt had once been kind, a good husband, and father. But everything changed after his affair with Erica began. Looking back at the happy days with my family of 3, my heart still aches, but I know I must not dwell on the past. Moving forward is important. Initially, Nick was deeply shocked, but over time, he gradually regained his cheerfulness. After a few months, he returned to his usual bright self, which relieved me. Time passed, and Nick finally graduated from university and secured a job at a well-known company, marking the end of my role in raising him. I continue to work as a nurse and plan to continue in this profession for as long as my health permits. I still maintain a good relationship with my in-laws, who celebrated Nick's graduation. I intend to continue living a fulfilling life, both in my career and personal life. I was speechless with shock upon my husband's sudden revelation that he had demolished the house I grew up in. I had only just inherited the house and land following my father's death. My husband had always wanted to demolish my family home to build a duplex house in its place, and it seems he finally managed to do so by force. I was devastated and angrily cried over the destruction of my childhood home filled with precious family memories, but Joe just mocked me, saying, "It was hard to demolish it myself, but I'm satisfied with having cleared the land in the end." My name is Sarah. I am 27 years old, living with my husband Joe, who is 3 years older than me, and we do not have any children yet. Before we got married, I lived with my father in our family home while working. My mother passed away when I was in high school, and since then, it has been just my father and me supporting each other. I had planned to start working immediately after graduating from high school and managed to find employment at a local company as planned, where I am still working today. I find my job fulfilling, and the atmosphere at my workplace is positive. Although Joe can sometimes be unreliable, his kindness since our dating days and his willingness to help with household chores have made me satisfied with our life as a couple. However, the only problem I am facing is not getting along well with Joe's parents. At the beginning of our marriage, I hoped to become close with them as they would become my new family. But they didn't seem to welcome me warmly, always showing a cold attitude, and our relationship worsened rather than improved. Gradually, I became exhausted from trying to maintain a relationship with his parents and now try to keep my interactions with them as peaceful and minimal as possible. Thankfully, we didn't live with them nor see them often, which has been a relief. If we had lived together, it might have been stressful enough to affect my health. Moreover, having my father in the same city was a strong support for me. Despite my worries about the relationship with Joe's parents, I believed we had managed to avoid major troubles so far and hoped we could continue to have a peaceful married life. However, recently, my father passed away suddenly from an acute myocardial infarction, leaving me to lose my emotional support forever. The grief of suddenly losing my father was deep, and I found myself visiting the family home often after the funeral, crying alone. Yet, considering my job and life with Joe, I knew I couldn't mourn forever. It was only recently that I began to come to terms with my feelings. After my father's death, the now uninhabited family home and its land fell to me to inherit. My mother had already passed away, and since I have no siblings, my father's estate naturally passed to me. After completing the inheritance procedures for the land, Joe and I started discussing the future of our home. My father had told me before he passed, "Sarah, after I'm gone, you can use this house and land however you wish." Therefore, the future of the now vacant family home was up to me to decide. That house was a precious place where our family had spent time together, filled with countless memories. For this reason, I had no intention of selling the land or demolishing the house at this time. Although it would incur property taxes, I wanted to maintain the status quo for the time being, occasionally cleaning the house and reminiscing about the time spent with my family in front of my parents' photographs. However, Joe had a different opinion. He was pleased as if the inheritance was his own, saying, "It's a waste to leave it as it is. You've acquired good land, so you should make effective use of it as soon as possible." Joe was eager to use the land where my family home stood, and our views were completely at odds. Indeed, the family home was conveniently located within a proper distance from the station, surrounded by facilities like shopping centers, making it geographically attractive. The house, built before I was born, also showed its age and some parts were deteriorating. However, one of the options I considered for the future was to renovate this house if we had children. So, I just couldn't accept Joe's proposal. The reason was his attitude of treating my family home as if it were his own property and pushing things forward forcefully. Additionally, my in-laws shared the same stance upon hearing about the house. Discussions had been had multiple times as if the entire in-law family would eventually move to that land, making me, the heir, feel left out. Seeing Joe and my in-laws getting overly excited made me fear that the house would be handled carelessly if things continued this way. Therefore, I emphasized to Joe time and again, "Listen, that house and land are mine, not yours or your parents'. So, please don't proceed with any plans on your own." However, Joe just casually responded to my concerns with, "It's okay, Sarah, you worry too much." He never truly listened to what I had to say. I thought he was a kind person despite his unreliability, but his attitude changed the moment I inherited my father's estate, hardly taking my words into consideration during our discussions. As a result, I began to harbor doubts about Joe, and my distrust grew stronger day by day. On a certain holiday, Joe said he was going to his parents' house and left early in the morning. I was caught up with household chores that had been neglected during the weekdays. However, less than an hour after he left, Joe returned with his parents in tow, and I had to abruptly stop my chores to welcome them. While they might be ideal parents for Joe, interacting with my in-laws was still challenging for me, given the issues with my family home. Father or mother, what brings you here today? I asked, filled with anxiety since there had never been a visit from them without prior explanation from Joe. We thought it's about time to make a decision about the future of your family home. That's why I called Mom and Dad over, Joe replied with a smile, confirming my worst fears and making my heart heavy. What do you mean by make a decision? I've always told you that I wish to keep things as they are, I stated clearly, only for Joe to immediately counter, I've told you it's a waste. That's why I want to demolish your house and build a new duplex house there so we can live with Mom and Dad. What? I couldn't hide my shock at his sudden proposal, but quickly voiced my opposition. What are you talking about? I absolutely cannot agree with that. I've told you before not to proceed with any plans without my consent. No matter how much I resisted, Joe and his parents just looked at me with surprise. Then the father-in-law, with a sigh of exasperation, said, leaving such a wonderful piece of land unused is a waste. You should seriously consider what Joe is saying. A wife should obey her husband. I didn't have the courage to point out that Joe had never seriously considered my opinions. His parents loved him deeply, and it was natural for them to side with their son. Their unconditional support for him was a testament to their deep affection. Moreover, the father-in-law in particular held on to outdated values, believing firmly that a woman should obey a man. In his view, the hierarchy within the family was clear and the wife was expected to follow her husband's instructions. Thus, if I expressed opposition to Joe's proposals or demands, I was inevitably faced with harsh reprimands. To him, how a daughter-in-law could speak in such a manner was unthinkable. My mother-in-law, choosing her words more carefully, said, Sarah, we're getting older and we might need care in the future. Considering our future lives, living under the same roof as Joe and you would be ideal. That way, we can have peace of mind knowing you're close by. However, behind her calm expression, I sensed an expectation for me to take on the household chores and daily tasks that come with living together. At that moment, with her husband present, she maintained her facade, smiling gracefully as she played the role of the ideal wife. But I knew from experience that whenever he was not around, her attitude towards me would change dramatically, becoming sarcastic, and the kindness she showed then would disappear. When alone with my mother-in-law during visits to their home, she would often make unnecessary comments like, haven't you had children yet? Or I want to see my grandchildren soon, and try to dump household chores on me, citing her age as a reason for being unable to move around easily. If I ever refused, she would persistently criticize me, saying, respecting your elders is the most basic principle. Can't you even follow that simple rule? What kind of environment did you grow up in? Because of the constant unpleasant behavior from my in-laws, the thought of living under the same roof with them was unbearable. That house is a place filled with precious memories of living with my parents for many years. So, I have no intention of demolishing it. Please, leave it as it is for now. I repeatedly pleaded, with no intention of changing my mind. Yet, Joe and his parents showed no signs of giving up easily. Such a stubborn daughter-in-law, considering the future, we should build a duplex house to live together. Your parents are no longer in this world, so you should dedicate yourself to us now. My mother-in-law said, dismissively regarding my parents with her words. I managed to compose my expression despite almost frowning at that statement. Ultimately, that day ended with both parties merely asserting their opinions, leading to no substantial dialogue, and my in-laws left somewhat disgruntled. From then on, Joe and I continued to have disagreements about my family home and its land. The current house is too small. And considering the possibility of having children in the future, wouldn't it be better to build a bigger house? Joe consistently insisted on building a duplex house, refusing to budge from his position. Behind his argument, it was clear that he was using the prospect of children as an excuse, when in reality, he wanted to live comfortably in a spacious house with his parents. While I could understand the desire to live with one's biological parents from a future perspective, I never gave a positive response to it. I was convinced that living together with my in-laws would inevitably lead to more troubles. Therefore, aside from the demolition of my family home, I strongly opposed the duplex house idea every time it came up. As a result, Joe would always become irritable. Over time, our marital relationship gradually deteriorated, passing without any meaningful discussions. Even amidst such circumstances, I made time to visit my childhood home, cleaning and spending time in memory of my parents. However, as work became busier, I couldn't visit it for about a month. Consequently, I decided to move my parents' portraits to our current residence. I hadn't mentioned moving the portraits to Joe. Recently, our conversations had quickly turned into arguments, so I decided to keep this matter to myself. However, this decision would later prove to be the right move for me. After a busy period at work ended, I was looking forward to relaxing the following weekend. I was expecting a peaceful break, but that morning, my in-laws appeared at our house without any notice. It had been a while since we last saw each other, the previous occasion being when we argued about my family home. This visit was also unexpected, with no prior notice from Joe or his parents. Strangely, my parents-in-law were in a very good mood, looking at me happily alongside Joe. "Today, we have something important to tell you, Sarah," said my mother-in-law with a smile. I had a feeling that this news wouldn't be good for me. "What is it?" I asked. Joe stood in front of me and calmly announced, "I've already demolished your family home." I was speechless with shock at that moment. The statement seemed like a bad joke, but seeing Joe and my in-laws smiling smugly forced me to accept the harsh reality. "Why would you do such a thing?" I demanded, but Joe continued to laugh off my question with a calm demeanor, as if mocking me. Astonishingly, Joe had demolished my family home without my knowledge or permission during the month when I was too busy with work to visit. It seemed he had taken advantage of my absence. It was tough to do it myself, but in the end, I'm satisfied with having cleared the land, Joe said, pretending to be tired. He had spared the expense of hiring a professional demolition company, borrowing heavy machinery from his father, who runs a small factory and owns several pieces of heavy equipment. His father, willing to fulfill his son's wish, had provided the machinery without hesitation and helped clear the land. "How could you do something like this without permission?" "I've said no many times," I cried out, tears mixing with my anger. My childhood home was filled with irreplaceable memories, including my parents' mementos and family photos from my childhood. The only thing unharmed was my parents' portraits that I had brought home. The reality that everything else was removed along with the rubble was like a nightmare. "How could you do something so terrible? I will never forgive you." I had reached my breaking point. I declared this with a firm gaze towards Joe and his parents, but they remained unfazed, as if convinced of their superiority. "You couldn't make a decision, so I took the step forward." "We can't wait forever for you to decide," Joe arrogantly justified his actions as if they were entirely rightful. Then he added with a loud laugh, "That's why I took over your family's land." Hearing Joe speak so proudly as if he were the rightful owner of the land, my anger turned to disappointment. I could feel my love for Joe rapidly fading. It seemed neither Joe nor his parents understood the gravity of their actions, and I let out a heavy sigh. "What are you talking about? When did I ever transfer that land to you? Since no formal procedures have been completed, that land is still mine." Joe appeared not to fully grasp the significance of my words, wearing a puzzled look, and his parents had similarly confused expressions. I had no memory of transferring those rights to Joe, as no formal registration of the property transfer had been completed. Thus, demolishing someone else's property without permission constitutes a legal violation. You might not know since you didn't go through a professional agency, But what you did can be legally penalized, I declared. At these words, Joe's complexion changed. If he had commissioned the demolition work to a legitimate company, this situation would never have arisen. I intended to show no leniency towards my husband Joe on this matter and continued. Even if we are married, demolishing someone else's property without permission, especially using your father's company's machinery, is against the law. I intend to take legal action on this matter, I emphasized. I had researched property law previously in case of any issues with the land I inherited from my father, never imagining Joe would go this far. Mentioning the use of the machinery, the usually calm father-in-law raised his voice in response. Wait a minute. In a marriage, a wife's property belongs to the husband, doesn't it? So, the logic that demolishing that house constitutes a crime doesn't hold up. I'll repeat, I am the rightful owner of that house, not Joe. I neither agreed to its demolition nor was I informed about such plans. What he did is clearly illegal, and I will be reporting this to the police. I cannot just stand by silently after you destroyed my cherished home without permission. My calm response left my father-in-law speechless. It seemed he had underestimated the seriousness of the issue. Even if he lent the company's machinery for Joe to demolish the house, he hadn't expected me to take legal action against Joe, thinking that clearing the land would somehow make everything all right. Reporting Joe to the police. You are his wife? Thinking about such a terrible thing seriously is problematic, isn't it? My mother-in-law exclaimed in panic, replacing my silent father-in-law. The real problem is you demolishing someone's house without permission. This isn't the kind of issue that can be resolved by hiding behind our marital status, I countered calmly. Then, I pulled out my smartphone and showed Joe the screen where I had searched for legal information. The screen displayed details about the crime Joe had committed. Your actions constitute criminal damage to property. This means a prison sentence without a fine, and you will be going to jail. Going to jail. His father panicked, and his mother let out a small scream. Wait, please, think it over. We're married, Joe said, turning pale and clinging to me. However, I firmly pushed him away, saying, don't use the fact that we're married as an excuse. Because of you, my childhood home no longer exists. You destroyed all its memories. I'll be contacting the police now, I stated clearly, deciding to report to the police on the spot. At that moment, Joe seemed to finally understand the seriousness of his actions. I'm going to be arrested. No way, he muttered in a trembling voice, collapsing in despair in front of me. Later, Joe was arrested, and I moved out of the house we shared to find a new place near where my family home once stood. Although I initially thought about divorce immediately, Joe refused, leading to prolonged negotiations through legal professionals. Thus, I considered a mediated divorce through family court. In the meantime, I hired lawyers and a private investigator to gather information on Joe's actions and background. The collected information revealed that Joe had frequently visited nightlife districts for years and had multiple loans hidden from me. It appeared he had been anticipating inheriting my estate from my father to settle his debts using my assets. Hearing this truth left me speechless. Furthermore, Joe had discussed this debt issue with his parents, and unbelievably, they had become guarantors out of love for their son. After Joe's arrest, the repayment of the debt began to falter, and my in-laws were chased to fill the gap. Out of the blue, I received a desperate call from my mother-in-law. Sarah, please help, she pleaded over the phone. When I asked why, she directly sought financial assistance. The pressure to repay Joe's debts had increased, and they were struggling to make ends meet. Sarah, you have the inheritance left by your father, right? Could you possibly share some of that money with us? Was her audacious request. I couldn't bring myself to seriously consider such an unreasonable request and coldly refused, saying that's impossible. Please resolve this issue yourselves before ending the call. Anticipating further calls, I decided to block my in-laws' number at that moment. I haven't shared my current apartment address with them and don't expect them to visit directly. I no longer wish to have any association with Jo or my in-laws. Receiving the call from her only intensified my desire to sever ties with Jo swiftly, leading me to file for a mediated divorce. As a result, the mediation was successful, and we were officially divorced. Later, I learned that my in-laws had to sell their home and the factory managed by the father-in-law, using the proceeds to pay off the debt. They have since moved to a small apartment in the countryside and are living a modest life. Years have passed, and although Jo was released from prison after serving his sentence, his criminal record has hindered his job search. It seems he has resorted to committing petty crimes like shoplifting and was arrested again. Hearing this, I felt nothing but disdain. I harbored no sympathy for him. After separating from Jo, I utilized the land that he had cleared to secure a steady income, leading a peaceful life. Thanks to the inheritance from my father, I won't face financial difficulties living on my own in the future. Nonetheless, I plan to continue working. Now that I no longer have any ties to Jo or his parents, I can devote even more to my work without any worries. I'm not considering remarriage at the moment, so I plan to focus on my career and enjoy my independent life for a while. Alright, finally managed to deliver. I'm glad I made it in time for this mince delivery. My name is Maggie. Since I was a child, I've loved drawing in sketchbooks with crayons and colored pencils, and that hobby has continued into my adulthood. When I was a student, I worked part-time drawing illustrations, which has become the foundation for my current career. Now, I'm enjoying a freelance life, drawing illustrations at my own pace. In addition to illustrations, I also create small comics depicting the daily lives of modern women in fashion magazines. I've heard encouraging words from my editor, like, "Maggie's drawings get a lot of positive reactions from our readers." And through this job, I met my current husband. He held an important position at a major publishing company I was associated with, and initially, our relationship was strictly professional. However, as we worked together, we grew closer. We bonded over shared past experiences, like losing our fathers at an early age. Before we knew it, we were going out for meals and movies together. After one such meal, he confessed his feelings, and we started dating. I had never dated anyone before, so I lacked confidence at first. "Really? You like someone like me? I don't stand out, and I'm just a bit better at drawing than the average person." "That's not true. You're really talented, Maggie, and I love the way you utilize that talent to the fullest." His kind words made my heart flutter. After dating for several years, we decided to get married. After getting married, we enjoyed our newlywed life for a while. Both my husband and I were then approaching 30. I wondered if it was better to have children sooner rather than later. Then, one day, my husband proposed that we live with his mother. I was initially surprised, but I had always yearned for happy family moments since I grew up in a single-parent household after losing my father early on. So, I looked forward to living with my mother-in-law. "Maggie, I have something to discuss. Actually, my mother wants to live with us. What do you think?" "Really? Hasn't your mother always lived alone at her place?" "Yes. She must have her own reasons for wanting this." I was surprised she brought it up to us, newlyweds, but I want to understand her feelings. I hadn't interacted much with my mother-in-law. The only occasions I could do so were during our wedding and other formal occasions. From the start, she seemed very warm and approachable. Her smile and kindness reassured me. My mother has been feeling lonely living by herself. I used to visit frequently, but I've been too busy recently. That must be hard for her. But if she wants to live together, it may be fun living together under one roof. "Really?" "Of course. I don't mind, and I'm looking forward to it." "Thank you, Maggie. That really helps." So, we decided to live with my mother-in-law. My husband was pleased with my decision, and our new life as a family of 3 began. "Maggie, what's your favorite food? I want to make something special for you." "Thank you, mother-in-law. Let me help you with it." "It's fine, Maggie. You relax here. Our cohabitation was going smoothly. My mother-in-law took care of most household chores. I was really grateful for her support, especially because I was exhausted from work. One day, my husband dropped a bombshell. "Maggie, this might come as a shock, but I've been transferred to another region." "What? Really?" I was filled with confusion and anxiety at the sudden news of his transfer. Considering our recent cohabitation, I wondered how this would affect my relationship with my mother-in-law. I thought about ending our living arrangement but couldn't ask my mother-in-law due to the unavoidable nature of the transfer. I also pondered moving with him, but staying in the city was more convenient for my job. Thanks, Maggie. If you ever have concerns about living with my mother, let me know. I remember feeling a bit relieved by his words. Thank you, I understand. In the end, I decided to continue living with my mother-in-law, but this decision might have been a bit hasty. At first, our cohabitation was harmonious. We respected each other's preferences and shared household chores. However, after living together for a short while, my mother-in-law began to change her attitude towards me. She assumed I wasn't doing anything. "Maggie, shouldn't you help out a bit more around the house?" "I'm sorry, I'm quite busy right now. I'm working on this tablet." "You say such things, but you're just holed up in the house doing nothing. Even if you draw on that thing, there's no way you can make money from it." "No, actually, I work using this tablet, and I support our household with my income." I've explained many times that I work from home, but my mother-in-law didn't believe me. She misunderstood me as a freeloader and asked me to help around the house. I intend to help with household chores as much as I can, but I'm busy with work and can't always help. So I contribute by putting at least $3,000 from my income into the household every month. That's the money my son is giving you, isn't it? There's no way you can pay that amount yourself. No, that's not the case. I tried to explain again, but my mother-in-law wouldn't accept what I said. Despite explaining multiple times that I was contributing a significant amount from my income even though I couldn't help more with the chores, she continued to ignore my words. It was futile, no matter how politely I tried to explain. As time went on, her attitude towards me hardened and she began to berate me. She has never worked since getting married. She occasionally goes out shopping or for lunch with friends, but primarily stays home. Despite this, she was relentless in demanding that I help more around the house, even when I was working hard to support the family. As a result, it sometimes affected my work and caused inconveniences to my colleagues. Under these circumstances, it became difficult for me to maintain credibility and continue working. I needed to find a solution. Then, one day, while I was working in my room, my mother-in-law called out, "Maggie, come to the living room for a moment." I headed to the living room, tablet in hand, to find not only my mother-in-law but also my brother-in-law and his wife, still holding that tablet. "What are you doing?" "I drawing." "Maggie, you still love drawing even as an adult, huh?" My brother-in-law, whose demeanor and attitude were the polar opposite of mine, remarked sarcastically. He was always self-centered, and we've had many clashes even before my marriage, probably because of this. "I'm actually working on this tablet right now." "Work? You're just doodling, right?" LOL. My sister-in-law, with her usual domineering attitude, always looked down on me and threw snide remarks. "No, I'm drawing as a job. We heard from our mother that you can't do household chores or work properly. So, can't you just leave this house? From now on, we're going to live with Mom." They ridiculed and berated me. My mother-in-law looked pleased with the scene. It hurts to be treated this way by family. Since I had urgent work to do, I needed to focus on my tasks. But my mother-in-law didn't like my attitude. "Why are you ignoring me? How rude, especially with that tablet." She yelled. "Wait, mother-in-law, what are you?" Suddenly, she snatched the tablet from me and slammed it on the floor. Why would you do that?" To add insult to injury, my brother-in-law and his wife gleefully stomped on the tablet. The tablet screen cracked in several places, and it wouldn't even turn on. Holding the broken tablet, I was shocked to realize I couldn't continue my work. I tried several times, suppressing my anger to restart my work, but the tablet wouldn't revive. This incident made me realize that continuing to live with my mother-in-law was no longer feasible. So, I shared the incident over the phone with my husband. He was silent for a while, presumably in shock, but then repeatedly apologized. I didn't intend to blame my husband, but I was moved to tears by his kindness. When I told him that I wanted to live with him and not at his parents' house, he was happy. I had previously been worried about living in a remote location due to his transfer, but now I felt that being with him was more important. After deciding to move out, I immediately started preparing to relocate. But during this busy time, a surprising event occurred. Suddenly, my mother-in-law, brother-in-law, and his wife came to see me. Why are you here all of a sudden? I'm quite busy right now, I exclaimed in surprise. Maggie, we heard you've been contributing $3,000 monthly. We're truly sorry about the other day. We didn't know until our son told us. We had no idea you were contributing so much. I could sense my mother-in-law's intentions. I've told you this before. Anyway, I've decided to move out and live with my husband. Perhaps they realized that without me, they would lose the monthly financial support. Maggie, don't say things like that. Let's all build a warm family together. Mother-in-law says if you leave, we have to pay $3,000. That's unbelievable. The reason Maggie got angry and left is because you broke that tablet, right? What are you talking about? It was Mom who broke the tablet first. Besides, all this happened because of Mom's misunderstanding. That's right. It's not mother-in-law's fault. Maggie doesn't do housework or work. She just stays in her room all the time. In fact, it wasn't Maggie who was contributing money to the household. An argument started between my mother-in-law, brother-in-law, and his wife. For me, this argument was very bothersome. Without paying any attention to my mother-in-law, as I continued with my moving preparations, adding insult to injury, she said, Maggie, I have a favor to ask. Without $3,000, we can't make ends meet. Even if you move to my son's place, won't you continue to send us living expenses? She looked apologetic. Why would I give money to dissolve our cohabitation? I chuckled a bit. Don't say things like that. What should I do from now on? My mother looked troubled. That's absolutely impossible. I shook my head. I don't have any money. Huh? I was putting $3,000 into the household every month, right? I thought that was more than enough for living expenses. After a moment of silence, my mother-in-law confessed, I spent the money at a nightclub. I was lost for words. You went to a nightclub? Mom, are you out of your mind? My brother-in-law also angrily retorted. Please, can you support my nightclub expenses? After losing my husband, I've been trying so hard to live by myself. You can sympathize with me, right? My mother-in-law looked like she was about to cry. Absolutely not. I sighed deeply. My sister-in-law nodded in agreement. My mother-in-law's shoulders dropped. She was probably shocked at the idea of stopping her visits to the nightclub. However, I had no intention of helping her. Maggie, I'm sorry for the trouble my mother caused. Let's get along from now on. My brother-in-law apologized. That's impossible. I don't want to live with her and her family. But I firmly refused. After that, I started a peaceful life at the new location where my husband was transferred to. Now, we are enjoying our days in a serene town, and I can work peacefully. During this time, a thought suddenly crossed my mind, the bomb that I had left at my in-laws' place. Just as I was wondering about it, I received a call from my mother-in-law. Oh, mother-in-law, what's the matter? Maggie, what's the deal with the comic you drew? What about the comic I drew? You know, the comic you drew is all about our family, right? Maybe it was. Apparently, the comic drew caused a big uproar at my in-laws' house. It realistically depicted the treatment and words I received from my mother-in-law and the couple, and it seemed to resonate with people of my generation. Although I changed the names of the characters, some relatives knew I was a comic artist, and someone apparently realized it was about my in-laws. My brother-in-law, his wife, and mother-in-law seemed to be under fire right now. Because of you, Maggie, everyone knows our secrets. What should we do? But aren't secrets like this bound to come out eventually? Now, how can we face everyone? They even found out I was going to a nightclub. It might be difficult, but please resolve it yourself. How cruel. Feeling a bit refreshed at my mother-in-law's outcry over the phone, I learned that the family faced many difficulties afterward. Due to the contents of my comic, angry relatives gathered at my in-laws, and it was revealed that my mother-in-law had spent a lot of money at the nightclub and was in debt. The debt was so massive that she couldn't repay it by herself. My in-laws had to sell their house to repay the debt, and my mother-in-law started living with my brother-in-law and his wife. It seemed she started a part-time job to repay the debt, but it was a tough situation. My brother-in-law and his wife, already struggling financially, faced even more challenges living with my mother-in-law. Eventually, my sister-in-law couldn't take it anymore and left the house after an affair, leaving my brother-in-law deeply depressed. Although I feel sympathy, I can't help but think they brought it upon themselves. As for us, we are enjoying our new life in the countryside. Shortly after moving here, we were blessed with our long-awaited baby. Initially, I was anxious about moving from the city to the countryside, but this area, blessed with beautiful nature, has become an ideal living environment. With the stress gone, we are enjoying a comfortable life. Furthermore, my previous comic was well received, leading to a new fashion magazine job, so both my personal and professional lives are progressing smoothly. I can't help but feel grateful to my mother-in-law and her family for the opportunity to move forward.